Okay, welcome to Scranton City Council, everyone. My name is Bill Gaughan. I'm the president of City Council. Today, we are going to be discussing in our caucus the agreement that the city is considering entering into with Portnoff Associates to collect the city's delinquent refuse fees. So with us tonight, we have Kevin Buraks. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. From Portnoff, we have Robert Daday. We have David Dugan from Portnoff as well. Joe O'Brien, our city solicitor, is here with us. Mary Jo Sheridan, the city treasurer as well. So thank you all for coming. Councilman Donahue requested you to come to a caucus just to give us a background on how you operate, what your business model is like, and anything you think is relevant within the agreement. So I'll turn it over to you now, and then when you're done, we'll ask questions. Thank you.
Sure. Well, thanks for having us, and we appreciate seeing you guys at least face to face visually, if not in person. But yeah, we're excited to help the city out. So I'll start by just giving a little bit of background on who we are. So Portnoff Law Associates is a Pennsylvania law firm. Our entire practice revolves around the collection of delinquent municipal fees and delinquent real estate taxes. That's all we do, and we've been doing this work in Pennsylvania for the last 30 years. We currently represent over 160 different municipalities across the state. So we're very familiar in Pennsylvania with how to collect delinquent municipal obligations. The key to our practice is that we proceed under a Pennsylvania law known as the Municipal Claims and Tax Liens Act. And what that act does is there's two big benefits that Scranton will see by collecting their delinquencies under that act. The first is that it allows the city to shift all collection fees and costs to the delinquent property owner. And what that does is that creates a very strong incentive for people to pay. And what we found with over the years is that there's always some people that have the ability to pay, and that simply they just choose not to, and they'll wait till a time that's either convenient or beneficial financially to them to do so. Under this act, by shifting the fees and costs, those people that have been holding the money and basically benefiting from keeping in their own pocket will realize that benefit's gone. So it's really a very quick culture change for those people who have the ability to pay and choose not to, because you can shift those fees. At the same time, the Municipal Claims and Tax Liens Act gives a lot of basically discretion for the city to do other things to create positive incentives to pay. So our firm will offer payment plans for people who need a little bit more extra time to pay. We have a hardship program for those people who the typical payment plan would be too short based on more severe financial or medical hardships. So we can work with those people that need help and give them extra time and incentive to pay that are positive. And at the same time, we can create negative incentives for those people that have the ability to pay and then choosing not to. So under the MCTLA, you can shift the fees and costs. So outside that incentive, what it also means is essentially at the end of the day, the city will get the benefit of our collection services with our fees eventually being paid in full by the property owner. So the city gets the benefit of using our services, creating those incentives without ultimately bearing the cost. And that's a real thank you to those people who pay on time, because most people pay their bills to the city on time. And as a result, they don't want to hear that the city's not doing what they need to do to collect these bills, and thus potentially their rates are going up or their taxes are going up as a result of the city's failure to collect. So under this act, those people that are paying on time are going to be grateful that the city is doing what it can to bring in the money that's on the street in a way that's fair to everybody, and responsible to those people that are paying. So that's the key to that act. Under our process, we sent out an initial letter of delinquency. And in that first letter, we give a lot of those incentives that I mentioned. So we'll mention that there's an opportunity for payment plans. There's an opportunity for a hardship program if you fit the criteria. They can contact our office and pay online, look up their balances online 24/7, make payment that way. But we also inform them of the negative incentives that I mentioned. So when the city is ready to start using us, they're going to enact an ordinance. And that ordinance is going to inform the public that the city is going to collect these fees under the Municipal Claims and Tax Liens Act, and it's going to shift the cost of collection to the property owner, and it's going to list what those fees are. We put that list of fees in our very first letter. So people will see that there is actually some ramifications for failing to pay. It's right there up front. And as a result of that, we get a very good response typically to that first letter, because people realize that the city is serious about collecting these. They're changing their procedures from the past, and that we're also giving them some positive incentives to incentivize them to do something early rather than later. So that's the first letter that goes out. We give them 35 days to respond to that. That letter is sent by certified mail. And this is the only charge that we charge directly to the city. It's a charge of $40 plus the certified postage, which is about $5.75. And we won't invoice the city for that initial notice until we've collected cumulatively at least that much. So there'll never be new money coming out of the city's account to pay for our services. And then going forward, every action that we take will come at a cost, and we take incremental steps. So the goal is to get your money coming in, but we'll take incremental steps for people that fail to respond to the step before. Each step comes at a cost. We front that cost and charge that directly to the property owner. So that's not charged to the city. And to the extent there's any hard costs in the process, court costs, sheriff's fees, we front those costs for the city and charge them to the property owner. So our firm actually will have skin in the game too, because we know that we'll collect at the end of the day, and we're willing to sort of put that money on the street for you guys to enable the city to collect its money. And we know that we'll be reimbursed from the property owner. So that's the process, basically, how we start off. And then we move forward. Each time we give them an opportunity, always for a payment plan and hardship program, that every step that we take, that option is always available to the property owner. If they fail to respond to that first letter, the next step in our process will be a notice that a lien will be filed on their property. Again, we give them 30 days. If they don't respond to that, a lien is placed on the file. And that lien, when that lien is filed, the city starts to accrue interest at 10% per annum on the principal balance. So at that point in time, there's some more incentive that's created to pay as a result of the interest that's being added. But at the same time, there's also now some value for the city for the time value that's being lost while the money is not being paid. So there's some extra reimbursement for the city while you're waiting to get paid as a result of that. But between that and the combination of the incentive to pay, that's a step that's helpful to the city. If they don't respond to that lien, the next step is what's called a writ of sara facias, which is akin to a civil complaint. That's actually served by the sheriff. So the sheriff will come out, knock on the property owner's door, serve them with paperwork. Again, a little bit more incentive to pay to the extent that they've been ignoring the notices that the city and my firm has been giving them. If they don't respond to that writ of sara facias, we give them what's called a 10-day notice and give them notice that a judgment will be entered if they don't respond. If they don't respond to that, we will file a judgment against them. And then the final step in our process would be to list the property for sale. And while this teeth is often needed at the end of the process to create incentive to pay, because people will realize that there's no end game to the process, people often wait out to the end and realize that they can sit and do nothing and pay it basically at their leisure. So this is a necessary step. But the reality is my firm rarely has to sell property to get paid. So in 2019, for all our clients, and we had about 51,000 accounts that came to our firm throughout the state from different clients. We only had a list for sale about 1.4% of the accounts. So a very small percentage of the accounts need to get to the point where we need to list them for a property sale as a result of not payment. And in 2019, we sold less than 60 properties. So, out of 51,000 accounts coming in, we're really not selling a lot of properties. The goal is to create the incentive on the earlier side for people to pay. And therefore, as a result, get you your money quickly. When we collect it, you get your money the next week. ACH transfer comes to your account. So it goes right away. But at the end of the day, the key is the process is there's a fairness. There's a fairness to those people that need a little bit more help because we are willing to work with them. And there's a fairness to those people that pay on time, because for those people that don't need help and just are choosing not to pay, we can provide some negative incentives that will create now new incentive for them to pay the city. So let me stop there for a second, see if there's any questions. I feel like I'm talking a lot.
Kevin, I thank you for that presentation. We appreciate it. Do you know offhand what the current amount is of delinquent refuse fees total?
I got a report today. Mary Jo sent that over. I can pull it up in front of me. There's delinquent accounts dating back to 2002. I know that. And there's close to 25,000 delinquent accounts. If you give me 1 second, I'll pull it up in front of me. I'm not sure that the Excel is, I don't think it actually totals what the total balance is though. But actually, wait, let me give me 1 second. I have another. Yeah, so this
Oh,
is
Mary Jo, I'm sorry. I think,
Yeah, Kevin, I think I have it.
Okay.
It's about the current balance is, from that report, which was dated October 31st, was, about 16.7 million.
okay. And Kevin, did your firm or does your firm identify what amount of that is collectible, is actually collectible? In other words, like, before you embark on collecting these fees, do you identify that those accounts that are non-recoverable, like whether they're foreclosed upon or anything like that?
Yeah, we do a review. We have a data analyst that will go through the data in detail to make sure that we're in a position. We're never going to go try to collect something obviously illegally uncollectible, because then we're all in trouble then. So we will go through that stuff. Bob, you're on the call too. Do you want to chime in here, because this is something in part of you?
Yes. Yeah, there is some of those accounts I'm sure are uncollectible in terms of, they could be vacant properties or properties that are in bankruptcy, properties that may have transferred to somebody else in the interim. So we do go through and we screen a lot of these properties when we initially get the account. But then as we may start on the account, and then later on down the road, as we gain more information about the property and about the property owner, we may conclude that we can't collect it for some reason or another. So.
And do you have any idea, after looking at all the data, what amount you believe that what percentage you think you'll be able to collect out of that 16.7 million?
I do not know, but Kevin probably has a better handle on that.
He's on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Kevin. Oh, you're still on mute.
Sorry. Yeah. So we just got the data today, so it's going to take some time to go through it. And we're going to have some questions, obviously, too. I know one of the issues that has come up is that there's potentially some fees and costs that have been added to those files from a prior collector. To the extent that these are on the files, we're going to need to see, pretty much a complete breakdown of what these are, what's been done by the prior collector, and, whether or not what's been put on there is in fact obviously collectible and legal and all that stuff. So, we need to sort of go into that. But the reality is, with regards to accounts that are out there, to the extent that there hasn't been a transfer of property that would negate the ability to collect it, and assuming that at the end of the day, the property value exceeds the amounts that are owed on it, there should be some leverage to collect it. Again, there's intervening factors that Bob had mentioned, such as, whether this is a mobile home, whether this is a bankruptcy file, whether this is a vacant property. But to the extent that the property is still owed by the same owner, to the extent that, the value of the property exceeds the amounts that are collectible, there should be some leverage to collect. So, but again, we sort of have to dig into this a little bit. We just got it today. Again, a lot of these delinquencies are recent delinquencies, and that's, from a collection standpoint, that's always a benefit. I mean, the older the delinquency, it's the harder it is to collect. I mean, that's just sort of a simple rule with collections. But there's a large amount of these that are recent delinquencies, 2009, 2019, 2018, 2017. To the extent that these properties haven't been transferred, they all should be fully collectible. But we'll have a data analyst that will dig into these with detail. He's already actually started to do it a little bit on our end, just to sort of play around with some of the figures since we've gotten them. And I can share, I guess, one of the things that, let me just pull it up in front of me. One of the things that he had mentioned that was sort of interesting. Just give me 1 second. So yeah, so there's one of the things that he noted that I guess there's about 4,800 parcels, different parcels for the outstanding trash fees. About 1/3 of those parcels have 1 year due on them. Only 1 year that's due, but that only comprises about 5% of the total fee. So, there's a large percentage that only has 1 year of delinquency, but that as for the outstanding balance, a small percentage of what is actually out there. Some of that might have to do with fees and costs that have been added to those files. But again, we'll sort of do these types of analysis to go through all the data, give you some interesting information, but also some good summaries as to what's out there and what we're looking at. So it's going to take a little bit of time to play with that, but we're going to need a little bit more information too, obviously, on some of the things that have been added to these files by the other collector to ensure that they are collectible.
Now, in terms of the data in the agreement under section 4, where it says obligations of the city, and maybe Mary Jo or Joe can answer this, or you can see if you can answer it. Do you think well, you haven't had a chance to look at the data, but can the city meet all of those obligations? Like there's several subsections, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Can the city meet those in terms of the data, like providing you with the number of things you asked for under each delinquent account in an electronic format?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I don't see an issue. Again, we have over 160 clients, and we have big clients, we have small clients. They're usually able to meet the criteria of what we need to do to collect by providing us with that type of information. So I don't foresee that being a problem. There just might be some follow-up and questions back and forth, right? In the beginning, there's going to be some things that we're going to need more information on. And it sounds like you might have to, I know that Mary Jo had already reached out to the prior collector for some of that information, and they're waiting for them to provide that. When that comes in, that's going to answer some things. And then going forward, there might be some back and forth, but I fully anticipate that you guys will be able to provide us with what we need to move forward with collections.
Okay, and then on page 2.
Just to follow up, sorry, Bill, because there's a fee associated with if you have to convert that to a format that works for you. So do you know or Mary Jo, do you know whether the format, electronic format for the information that Portnoff requires, that's acceptable to them so that the city won't have to incur the cost of having that converted? You're muted. You're muted, Mary Jo.
Sorry about that. I have not received any information or any feedback from Portnoff at this point that the data that we've provided in the format we've provided it so far is an issue. We are, of course, still working with the outgoing vendor to get the final set of data. But I don't anticipate that would be a problem.
I agree with Mary Jo. I don't see it being a problem so far. And again, those costs are all options. I mean, it's something, if there was an issue that needed to be corrected, the city would have the ability to do it themselves without having to pay us to do it. If they wanted to pay us for the service, that's always an option. But I don't see that being an issue needed. But to the extent that it is, it's something I think probably at the end of the day, the city can end up doing and correcting themselves if they chose to go that route. So, yeah.
I think one of the issues with the previous collector and one of the things I'd like to talk about now with all of you is that, at the end of the contract, obviously the company incurs, a certain amount of money in attorney's fees and other fees. So my concern would be that, in 2 years, if there's a different administration or a different council and they want to move in a different direction or do something else or bring it in-house or whatever that may look like, that we are going to ultimately owe all of you, or the city will owe you a certain amount of money that you've incurred. So would you be open to capping that amount at a certain point, like coming back before council or to the city and, when you reach a certain amount, that would be my concern that, at the end of, in other words, like, someone in the future may want to move in a different direction, but it would be hard to do that because we'll owe you, the catch is that, well, geez, we're going to owe them, $200,000 or something like that.
Well, I mean, the way it typically works is, so right, as I mentioned, we front the hard costs. So those hard costs are fronted for the city. So they're skin in the game for us that way. And then obviously any legal work that we're doing, we charge that to the property owner. So, we're incurring these fees. We won't charge the city for them because we're going to collect them from the property owner. The only time this would come into effect really is if the city were to decide in the future that they're going to pull the accounts from us that we've been working on. We don't lose too many clients, to be honest. Again, we have over 160. So there's not a lot of people that are leaving us. And on occasion, we've had a couple of people have left in the past, typically due to politics or things like that. But typically what they do is they'll just leave the accounts with us and they'll move forward and they'll start the collection for the next set of accounts that they're not giving to us with a new collector, if that's what they're choosing, or in-house, however they're going to do it. But they typically just leave with us what we're collecting. Because again, we have incentive to collect because we have money that's owed. So we're not going to get paid anything until we collect it. So, there's no thought that they're going to keep the accounts and not do anything. Like, we wouldn't do that because that would be to our own disadvantage, because then we would never get paid. So, we like the idea of having the accounts in our hands because we know we can collect it and we know we'll get our money back. If the city were to pull the accounts, obviously at that point in time, we're going to want to be reimbursed for our hard costs and then for our fees.
What does the agreement say about reimbursement for fees at the end of the contract? I don't have it in front of me. I know, obviously the hard costs, I understand that, but what does it say for fees that you're entitled to collect?
It's
I don't think it
essentially,
covers it, does it?
the city would only really incur those fees if they pull the accounts from us. If they keep the accounts with us and they terminate the contract, they let the accounts sit with us and let us continue to collect on those accounts, they're not going to be having to pay those fees. But it would be, if the accounts were pulled from us and we would have no ability to collect our own fees and costs, at that point in time, we'd expect reimbursement. But to the extent, again, that the client allows us to continue to work on them, even though the contract is terminated for this extent that there's going to be no new refuse fees coming to our firm for collection, we would continue to service and work on those fees, work on those accounts just like we were before.
How are accounts defined, though? And how do you define which accounts you're being assigned here? That's what I don't understand. I think the RFP was for delinquent refuse fees from 2002 to 2020. I don't see that memorialized in your contract. So when you say accounts, which accounts are you being assigned, or the
term is defined in section 1 of our contract. And it says that all accounts that have been or will be placed with Portnoff for collection shall hereinafter be referred to individually as an account or collectively as the accounts. So essentially anything that you guys are giving us to collect, we would consider that an account.
So Mary Jo, in this instance, the accounts would be all delinquent refuse fees from 2002 to 2020?
Yes.
So in other words, just so we understand, Kevin, that in the event that we terminate the city, not this council, but another council and another mayor terminates its agreement with you, you will be, and says, we don't want you to do any more work for whatever reasons. I understand you have a good track record, but for whatever reasons they determine they don't want you going forward with your collection actions on those, I guess, 18 years worth of refuse fees, whatever you're out, the city has to reimburse you for, if you have not recovered that from the property owner, correct?
Only if they're going to decide to pull the accounts from us.
When we say pull the accounts, we mean terminate the agreement, right?
Well, no, I mean, there's two parts to that, right? You can terminate the agreement by saying we're no longer going to give you anything new going forward. Because again, most of our clients, they hire us, we collect the things that are past due. And then as the contract is in effect, they'll continue to give us new delinquent accounts every year to collect. To the extent, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, but to the extent that you terminate and want to stop giving us accounts, that's, to me, that's sort of what the termination is, basically, that you're no longer going to be giving anything new. But at the same time, you can terminate and still have the accounts that are in our possession remain with us for collection. Like, we would still service just like we were before, because the same incentives for us are there. I mean, obviously we want to keep our clients forever, and we want them to tell us, tell other cities and municipalities we're doing a great job. But to the extent that they're not going to give us anything new. We're still going to collect those accounts because that's the only way that my firm will get paid. Yeah, and again, we're going to have a fair amount of, you have a lot of accounts out there. We're going to have a lot of hard money on the street and just cost alone that we're going to put out there on behalf of the city. We want to collect that money. So, we're not going to make any money off of any of these accounts unless we can collect it. And at the same point, to the extent whether you want to give us more after this or not, the incentive is not going to change for us to collect what we have in house. So that's typically what happens when a contract is terminated.
But I'm just trying to understand this. So this contract because until you get the accounts, you get full reimbursement from the accounts where you pursued. This technically could go on indefinitely, correct? In other words, you'll be pursuing these for you don't know how long. There's 18 years worth of delinquent fees.
Yeah, I think we'll do better than that. But yeah, I mean, right. The extent, I mean, look, if someone files for bankruptcy could be 5 years. So that's now on hold for 5 years, pretty much until, there's things that we can do in bankruptcy. That's that's a long discussion. But in any event, to the extent that bankruptcy is out there, we're waiting those 5 years, but then we'll continue to do it afterwards. So yeah, some things take longer than others for a variety of reasons. But at the end of the day, we're going to actively move forward and do what we can to get you your money, because again, that's how we get our money. So we're really very much in the same boat when it comes to trying to win here and get the money paid. So, but again, we do it in a way that we've determined is fair and equitable, and we're not going to do anything to make the city look bad. I mean, for example, this year for our clients, we voluntarily basically put our active collection on hold for over 2 months during the COVID pandemic, because we just didn't think it was the right thing to do. And we thought it was going to make our clients look bad. And universally, our clients agreed and said, that's right. We agree with that. So, that's not helping our firm, but we put everything on hold for 2 months. And then in May and June, when things started opening up again, we reached out to our clients individually and said, it looks like the time is probably right to start again. And then they would give us permission to do it. So again, we're very careful with what we do. We only represent public entities. The people we collect from are your constituents. We're very much aware of that, and we treat everyone very well, and it's a fair process. So again, we're not going to do anything that's going to make you guys look bad, but at the same time, we're going to set up parameters with you from day one on how we're going to do things, and we're going to proceed with those marching orders, and everyone's going to be treated fairly and equally. But at the same time, there's a responsibility to pay. Most people pay on time. And we're going to go after those people that aren't paying. And if they want to work with us, we'll work with them. And if they don't want to work with us, then they're going to be experiencing additional fees and costs. But our incentive doesn't change from year 1 or year 10 of the contract. We're going to still try to collect these fees if they're collectible. And if they're not collectible, we're going to let you know that there's a reason that this isn't collectible anymore. This property transferred, something happened in the bankruptcy, whatever it is, we're going to keep you informed. Hopefully better than you were before, because it sounds like, just from my conversations, there's been a lack of transparency and information that you guys have been requesting. So we're going to try to make you guys look good that way and keep you in the loop. But at the same time, though, our goal is the same as the city's, and that's to collect these accounts in a fair and equitable way.
I'll open it up to the rest of council now. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a quick one. So, did I hear correctly that you said that there's 25,000 delinquent accounts? What did I hear earlier? How many delinquent accounts?
Yeah, so according to the spreadsheet that we received, I'm just going to go to the bottom again. It looks like there is, and then there's probably 1 or 2 other accounts. There's at least 24,950 delinquent accounts somewhere in that neighborhood.
Can I clarify that though?
Sure.
The way that the current vendor stratifies the population is by property by year. So each line in the data set represents 1 year / property. So there really are about 5,000, I think, right around 5,000 different properties which have delinquencies.
Okay,
Yes, I guess.
So there's 5,000.
So look,
Yeah.
Following up on what Mary Jo just said. So our data analyst said that there's 4,861 parcels. So there could be multiple accounts in a single parcel. And we proceed with.
Yes.
Again, we have to see what the old collector has done, but typically we proceed, I mean, our whole practice is, in a sense, we proceed against property and not the property owner. It's an in rem process. So, right, under that purview, we'd probably be doing about, right, pursuing 4,800 properties in a sense.
So the 4,800 properties, you're going to send out 4,800 $40 letters, right? Is
That's
that correct?
correct.
You're not gonna send out $25,000 $40 letters.
No.
Per delinquent, because that's $1 million. So you're just going to send per parcel one $40 letter.
Right. I guess we have to sort of we have to see what they've done in the past with regards to how they pursue the delinquents. Again, I'm not sure exactly what the old collector was doing. So that's something we need to sort of figure out. But right, the typical goal is to, right, you send one per parcel and then move forward. Bob and David, correct me if I'm incorrect in any way on that.
I guess the only issue would be is if the prior collector had filed liens for separate years, it might make it, we could still probably combine the accounts, but it might make it more difficult to combine all the years into one account, depending on whether they filed liens or not. But that's, again, something we'd have to look at once we get that data from them, so.
Okay.
So that initial letter goes out. We're talking about a $40 letter plus you said $575 for the registered mail. It looks like it's probably about $250,000 that'll be billed to the city for those letters. Is there any other fee other than that fee that will be charged to the city? Anything that we're not aware of or we're going to find out later?
No, that's the fee, and we won't invoice you guys for that until we've collected at least that much, so that you won't be out of pocket. There's no risk going forward that, oh, we're putting out money, we didn't get it back yet. So we'll hold that invoice until we've collected at least, whatever it is, if it's 250,000, whatever it is, we're going to hold it and invoice you for that. But no, going forward, there shouldn't be extra fees. I'm trying to think, there's like one option. Sometimes some of our clients will choose to hire us in a specific bankruptcy case. If there's a really high balance and there's things going on, we might offer to be hired by the city for like $500 in that case. You don't have to do it. Sometimes our clients will do it depending upon what's going on, where we'll have like a bankruptcy specialist actively pursue that in the bankruptcy. It's just a little bit different. But again, that's sort of an option for the city that you could or could not do depending upon that specific case. It's really very case by case. But other than that, yeah, there's no fees that are really added to the account or charged, anything like that, other than what we charge the property owner. So it's not coming from the city.
Let me follow up on that, Councilman. The prior agreement with NRS provided that they got 15% of all the refuse liens they collected, plus the statutory fees that Kevin's talking about. This agreement, we don't pay that 15%. So that's it's a big plus in this agreement.
All right. Now you're saying with that first letter, you have a high success rate. Do you know what the success rate is of that? What's the percentage of collection on that first letter?
It varies by client. Yeah. Again, I can't tell you until it happens, but I can tell you, like, we've had clients that had over 50%. I'm not going to say that's going to happen here because there's some really old delinquencies that are outstanding. But, we do well with that first letter because the key is to prompt some type of response. And a lot of people will pay. A lot of people will call us and say, can we set up a payment plan? Some people will do the hardship route. But the idea is to sort of wake people up who've been sort of sleeping on these and get them to do something. Because if they contact our office, that's a great first step, because that means that they want to do something, and we'll figure out a way to work with them and get that money in.
All right. This might be just an example, but say, hey, we get $1,000. You send out some letters, we get $1,000. How does that $1,000 break up between the city and your law firm?
Our firm gets paid first because, again, that's only we get paid. So to the extent we have any hard costs, those come out first, then our fees, then everything that's owed the city.
Okay. And then you said with each step there comes added cost to the property owner. At what point? Well, first off, you said there might be some old fees and liens from prior collectors. Is that going to remain on that property owner? Those old fees and any of those old fines? If
they were illegally incurred. I mean, again, we're gonna have to sort of see what was done and make sure that because again, the Municipal Claims and Tax Liens Act that I mentioned, there's very specific steps that we take that need to be done to ensure that you can actually shift the cost to the property owner. Because if you don't do it correctly and they don't have proper notice before you start doing that, those fees are void. So again, we're gonna have to sort of look and see what they've done and make sure that they've actually followed the correct steps, because if they didn't, those fees are not shiftable, and that's their own fault. You know what I mean? But that's, we're gonna need to sort of look into that. But right, to the extent that the lien and already filed on the property for a specific year, we're not gonna refile that lien. Like that's, even though that's a step in our process, we would not do that step, obviously, because it's been done, and we would move forward to the next step, or we'd figure out logically, you know, look at this file. That's the thing. I should try to explain this in a little bit more detail, but we don't just mass produce what we do. Like, we actually look at everything that we do. And this is going to, you know, this is a big client. We have a lot of things out here that have been done in the past. So we're gonna have to spend a little bit more time looking at things, but we might look at a file and say, look, there's 10 years of past delinquency. The next step isn't to do this letter. This next step might be to do a consolidation of the liens that are out there, and thus create more incentive for them to pay, instead of having sort of individual actions that have been filed by the old collector. Again, until we sort of dig into what they've done already, it's a little bit difficult for us to sort of predict what would be done in a specific account. But we're going to look at every individual account and determine, you know, what the best step is now for the city to collect this. And, you know, it might not be our typical process in that file. It might be, we're going to do this a different way and file a motion, or get this in front of a judge to create some more incentive to pay. So, you know, we're going to look at that stuff. And that's, you know, Bob oversees our litigation department. That's something that his team does. And David's going to be your individual team attorney on these accounts. He's going to have a lot of familiarity with this stuff. He's also going to figure out creative ways to sort of collect. So the comment, again, I probably should have said this in the beginning. We're a big firm. You know, we have over 75 employees at our clients' access, and we look to be creative when it comes to collecting. I mean, when we have our set procedures, but in certain situations, what normally is done isn't going to work, based on the fact that there's either a ton of old delinquencies, or there's a property owner that's, you know, really been ducking their obligations to the city. So we're going to sort of look and see what's been done in the past and try to figure out ways to sort of make sure that people pay, given the fact that there is a lot of old delinquency here.
Yeah, no, as you said, like, as you get to each step, you know, the cost goes up to the property owner, and you're saying about 10% goes on to the principal as you're doing that. Do we get to a point where so much has been added that our collection rates do come down?
No, well, 10%, let me correct that if I said that was incorrect. So the way it works is every step that we do it's a hard cost. So that's for the property owner, it's very predictable. I mean, in our first letter, you're going to see what those hard costs are going forward. It's very predictable what they're going to end up paying if they don't do anything over time. So each step that we take comes at a specific fee, and it comes with a hard cost if there's a hard cost that's been incurred. So if there's a court filing, there's a court cost. If there's a sheriff's service, there's a sheriff's cost. But each step, it's an incremental add-on. So again, when you add on a percentage, so if we were doing a contingency basis, which we don't do, there's not a lot of incentive. When you add on 15% from day one to the property owner, there's no incentive to pay at that point in time. Like you owe 15%. We add our fees incrementally, little by little, going forward for each step that we do. And again, that's what creates the incentive for people to pay. And that's frankly why we don't have to sell a lot of properties, because at a certain point in time, again, for a lot of people, they get the first letter, $40 plus postage. They realize they can cap their costs at this point in time, and we'll deal with their delinquency. There's some people that choose not to, or they're ignoring that letter. The next step that comes, it comes at another fee. The next step, another fee. So people quickly learn, like, I just added a couple $100 to my account, where if I would have paid this on time, I wouldn't have had that. And people learn. The reality is a lot of our clients last year, close to 70% of our clients that made a one-time turnover saw a reduction in the amount of delinquent accounts that they had the year before. And what that means is people learn from the process, and they realize that I don't want to have to pay extra if I don't have to. And as a result of the fee or two now being added this year, people will pay. So again, there's always some people that get to the end of the process and just choose to ignore the whole thing. They're going to be paying more fees. Those people that respond to the first letter, they're paying $40 plus postage. Pretty reasonable. And then next year, they're going to think twice about going delinquent because they don't want to pay any extra. So, you know, it's a mindset change for a lot of people that, you know, realize that in the past, that while the city hasn't been active in collecting these, or the prior company hasn't been as active in collecting these, this collector is going to be more active from day one. And again, people don't like the fees being added, but in a sense, it sort of wakes people up and it changes their behavior. So this way in the future, they're not going to be paying extra fees and costs, because they're going to see the city's bill, and the first time they're going to realize, all right, I'm going to pay it. Or if I'm in a situation where I have trouble, I'm going to contact Portnoff right away and set up a payment plan. I'm not going to wait on this for a couple of years and then realize now I'm in a bad situation because I waited so long. So we bother people on the early side, but it really behooves them, because at this point in time, they're going to be able to deal with it where the amount's a little smaller, where, you wait 20 years to try to collect something. That amount is pretty high by now, and it makes it very difficult to pay. So it's a different process, but again, it works well, and there's fairness to it. And at the end of the day, like, it's sort of tough love, but the property owners, they don't like getting charged extra, but then by getting charged extra on the early side, rather than sort of waiting down the road, they're going to be in a better situation to pay their bills going forward.
Now, does your firm, do you treat a single property owner different than you would treat someone that owns multiple properties in the city?
There's things that we can do that help us collect on multiple delinquencies versus one, but no, I mean, well, I guess, let me correct that for 1 second. With regard to our hardship program is typically open to owner occupants who reside in the property. So someone who has a business property, we're probably not going to, again, and the parameters for the program, we'll be discussing them with the city when we're hired and work on those parameters. But most of our clients tend to choose the way we do it. And again, we usually open the hardships just for owner occupants. So it's someone who owns properties for business purposes, or they rent them out, whatever. We don't typically give them options for hardships because it's a business and they should pay what's out there. Again, we can discuss that. And if it's something that you guys want to do differently, we can discuss that. But yeah, so I guess that is a difference with regard to someone who owns multiple properties and doesn't live in the property. We would expect them to pay through our normal payment plan. We still would offer a payment plan option. And again, that's
Can I interject here, Kevin? I think one thing that, and Tom, I might Councilman Schuster, I might be mistaken, but I think one of the concerns that we all have is that there are some owners of multiple properties in the city who are chronically delinquent. And I was wondering if you could talk about that process. I don't know the Latin term, but that writ of something or other that you can do that would affects these types of owners. If they try to sell a property, we can go ahead and collect on another property or something like that.
Do you want to jump in on this one? I know you deal with this.
Sure.
Yeah,
Well,
can we just, before you explain that, after you explain this point, would all of you mind hanging around while we start our regular meeting? We have to legally start by 6:30 because that's what's advertised in the newspaper. We just have to go through the first part of our meeting. That'll take about 5 minutes. And then when we get to fourth order, citizens participation, if you don't mind sticking around, we'll resume this conversation and we appreciate it. So if that's okay with everyone,
sure.
That's what we'll do after. But you can go ahead and explain that last point that Mary Jo made.
Sure. Typically, when we have property owners who have multiple delinquencies, we obviously pursue it in terms of each individual property, but we would typically file motions to consolidate the various delinquencies for the purposes of filing what we call a writ of sar facias, which is the complaint. So it joins all the back years into one claim, and then we take a judgment and then proceed with execution. But typically, again, most of these people, once we've started that process, they will start making arrangements to enter into payment plans. The other thing too is they passed that one act several years ago, which if an owner of a property owns multiple properties within the county, they basically have to pay off all the delinquencies that are in that same name. So that does catch a lot of people down the road when they go to sell properties. But yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was good. And so if you don't mind, we'll continue this conversation in about 5 minutes. We just have to start our regular meeting. So if everyone would hang around, we are going to start our regular council meeting now. Again, today's Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. And if everyone would please stand now for the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll call this public meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If everyone would please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for all those people who have passed away recently in our community. Let us also take a moment of silence for all of the people in our community, in our country, and across the world who have passed away from the coronavirus. The COVID-19 pandemic has turned our world upside down, but we must remain hopeful and strong. We continue to pray for the doctors, nurses, researchers, and all medical professionals and first responders that seek to heal and help those affected and who put themselves at risk in the process. May they have protection and peace. Whether we are home or abroad, surrounded by many people suffering from this illness or only a few, let us stick together, endure together, mourn together, and in place of our anxiety, let us have hope and peace. Thank you. Ms. Carrera, roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Present.
Mr. McAndrew,
Present?
Dr. Rothchild,
Here.
Mr. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Gaughan.
Here, thank you. Councilman Donahue has a motion to make.
We do. I'd like to make a motion to take from the table file of council number 36, 2020.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second on the question. On the question, this piece is being taken from the table and placed in seventh order tonight for a final vote. This is the waste disposal and collection fee for calendar year 2021. And Mary Jo Sheridan, our city treasurer, is here. We'll have her speak on that after we have our discussion with Portnoff. There are also three remaining pieces of legislation that are tabled. Resolution number, well, wait a minute until we get off the question here. Is anyone else on the question on the motion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved. There are three tabled pieces of legislation. Resolution number 49, 2020, which authorizes the city to accept a piece of equipment, a John Deere backhoe loader provided by Keystone Sanitary Landfill. There's also file of the council number 35, 2020, which is the city's 2021 operating budget, and file of the council number 37, 2020, an agreement with Portnoff Law Associates to collect the city's delinquent refuse fees. At council's meeting scheduled for next week, December 15th, I will entertain a motion to place the resolutions and ordinances in the seventh order for a final vote. So if anyone from the public would like to comment on these ordinances and resolutions, please feel free to submit your comments to our city clerk, Lori Reed, at lreed@scrantonpa.gov, or you can send written correspondence to 340 North Washington Avenue, Scranton 18503. Mrs. Reed, please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Thank you. Third order. 3A correspondence received from OECD Executive Director dated November 25 and November 30, 2020 regarding COVID-19 reimbursements through Lackawanna County CARES Act funding. 3B check received from Lackawanna County in the amount of $326,203.37 for COVID-19 relief block grant reimbursement. 3C correspondence sent to Mayor Paige G. Cognetti dated November 30, 2020 regarding ordinance for engagement of Portnoff Law Associates LTD. 3D correspondence sent to Mayor Paige G. Cognetti dated November 30, 2020 regarding closing disbursements, tax and revenue anticipation note for 2021. 3E Lackawanna County Court of Common Pleas order dated November 30, 2020 regarding City of Scranton request to transition to payroll preparation tax. 3F Single Tax Office City Funds Distributed Comparison Report 2019-2020 year to date November 30, 2020. 3G City of Scranton 2021 operating budget summary of new positions, job descriptions received November 20, 2020. 3H minutes of the Scranton Redevelopment Authority meeting held November 4, 2020. 3I fuel card analysis received from Office of the City Controller for the period October 24 through November 23, 2020. 3J minutes of the Civil Service Commission meeting held November 5, 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Are there any comments on any of the third order items? One of the comments I have, Mrs. Reed, in the one of the items here is the job descriptions. Council was provided within the last few days additional job descriptions that were not originally included in that document. So if you can please post those job descriptions that relate to the 2021 operating budget in third order for next week, I would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Since there's no other comments on the third order items, we'll received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time? No announcements? Okay. Mrs. Reed.
Fourth order, citizens participation.
Okay, thank you. Now we can resume our conversation with Portnoff Associates here about the agreement that we're going to take up next week, which is to hire Portnoff Associates to collect the city's delinquent refuse fees. So I'll continue to open it up to the floor here in terms of questions for the gentleman and Ms. Sheridan who came tonight. Any other questions on the agreement or in general?
I just have one quick one just to try to make sure I understand the fees completely. So say, I owed $300 from 2018. When I get my first letter, how much will I owe according to your initial letter? You're muted, Kevin.
Okay, sorry. Better?
Yes.
Okay, so again, it's assuming that everything that is on the account is fully collectible. The letter coming from us will be that amount plus $40 plus the certified postage, which is about $575.
Okay. So it would be $340, if I paid it right then.
Correct.
The only reason I was asking, because I don't understand what the initial review and sending first legal demand letter 175 under the legal fees represents.
That's the second step in our process. So the initial letter is that $40 plus postage. That letter basically informs them that fees have been shifted and a lien will be filed if they don't do anything at that point in time. So again, that's sort of, as I mentioned before, there's incremental steps in what we do. That's the second incremental step. But the first letter is the initial letter is that $40 plus postage, informs them of all the positive incentives I mentioned earlier, informs them of the negative incentives, and that the city is going to intend to shift the fees going forward. So that's the thing that triggers the ability to shift the fees going forward. That letter.
All right, thank you.
I
That's
just had
something
a
else.
quick question, concern. I know that you were explaining earlier the need to analyze the accounts first to see, for how many years they might have owed or if there are other liens existing before you get to those next steps in the process. But with the amount of accounts, do you think that'll take a lengthy period of time to get through and to perform that analysis before you actually get to sending out the letter, or are you just going to be, prioritizing it? I'm wondering how long it will take before people actually start to see that first letter.
Hopefully quickly. And again, it's tough because we're just getting into the data today for the first time, and there's still a lot of open questions. But again, we're hoping to move through that as quickly as possible. Again, because we're going to spend a lot of time doing that. And that first letter, that $40 plus postage, is not, to be very honest, it's not like a profit-making letter for our firm, because there's a lot of work that goes into creating that first letter and getting everything out and creating the forms and things like that. So, but we want to start the process too. So again, as I mentioned before, we're going to be in the same incentives as used to move forward and start pursuing these quickly. But again, we're never going to take a step before we're absolutely ready to do it, because we're not going to put the city or our firm at risk for being sued because we weren't careful. So we're going to be very careful, and especially with regard to the fees and costs that are existing on those files from the old collector, we need to be 100% sure what they are, whether or not they are in fact collectible, because we're never going to send out a letter without knowing 100% of what we're asking for. So I know it's sort of a little bit of a circular answer, but our goal is to do as quickly as possible, but we're also going to be as careful as possible. So we're going to have to combine those two things.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was a defined period of time for how long you anticipated that taking. I just don't want to get into where it's, several months down the road and then we're not seeing as much.
We typically at the beginning of the year get 40 to 50,000 claims in, and we do turn them around relatively quickly. Is that right, Kevin and Dave? I'm not part of that aspect of the process, but we do turn it around relatively quickly. This is going to be a little bit different because we're looking at this data. This isn't a client we've had in the past, obviously. So as Kevin has indicated, there is this issue with Northeast, their fees and costs. We have to take a very close look at that to make sure that there isn't going to be any issues with regards to our collection efforts on your behalf. I think you're going to be really excited about what we can do for you. I know that many years ago, when I was the solicitor for the city of Allentown, we hired Portnoff to collect our water and sewer liens, and they did a tremendous job for us. We've also done this for the city of Easton, and we continue to do it to this day. So I think at the end of the day, you're going to be really pleased with what we can produce for the city.
I understand. Thank you. Yeah, it just seemed like with the data and the amount of counts, it sounds like an overwhelming number to me. So just want to get some perspective on.
We've had a lot of clients too in the past who I suspect your data is probably significantly better than many of the clients that we've had. I can remember one city that we collected for, and it was a little, it can be a little challenging, but I suspect your data is probably pretty decent.
I caution against making that assumption.
Well, in dealing with the city of Allentown, I think you understand some of the issues that have been facing our city recently too. When we're looking at an account or a client that has 24,950 delinquencies, which end up being about 4,800 parcels, and covers a period of 18 years, how big would you say the city of Scranton as a client is to your firm and their 160 other clients? Would you say that's a big case?
Yeah, it's definitely one of our biggest ones up there with Allentown and Easton and some of the big school districts that we have, Altoona. Yeah, you guys are a big client, and again, but we have clients, as I mentioned before, we have clients that are big, we have clients that are small, we have clients that are urban, we have clients that are rural, but our process is always the same. For all those clients, the process is the same. We still look at every individual account as an individual account and make the best decisions as to what needs to be done on that. So the fact that you guys are a big client is great, and we're excited to service you. But again, we're going to treat every property owner just the way we treat every other property owner throughout the state. Yeah, to me, the big challenge here is, again, I know that the city is currently waiting for some information from the prior collector. As fast as that can come in, it's going to expedite our review, because that, to me, that is sort of the biggest asterisk right now out there with regards to the data itself. Is there's big numbers in potential fees and costs. When I look at the data, what are they? I mean, the other numbers, I know Mary Jo's easily going to be able to provide answers to anything that we might have. It's just, that's the stuff that we're going to need to get it on. I know she's waiting on that, and hopefully they respond quickly and get that to us. And then, we'll be able to start digging a lot faster.
Yeah. And when looking at a caseload of this size, how fast do you think you can get through those 18 years to move ahead to maybe some new cases or new delinquencies? I mean,
the reality is too, like every account doesn't have to be started from day one, right? So as I mentioned before, there's a large amount of accounts with 1 year of delinquency on it. Those letters should be pretty quick getting those out, because and those accounts too, the majority of them, the fees and costs are pretty low. So some of the accounts will have like a $10 add-on. I'm sure we can find out the answer to what that $10 add-on is, and then start moving on them. Where some of the older ones, we can continue to work on those as we're getting stuff out. So it's not like we don't have to wait for day one to get 100% of things out on day one. We can start, basically triaging and figuring out the ones that are simpler, start getting those letters out right away, and then keep moving through, the other ones that are a little bit more challenging. So again, we're going to be very communicative with you guys on this. You're going to, we're very transparent. One of the compliments we always get is on our reporting that we provide to our clients. We provide reporting that is very detailed. It gives you all the, pretty much everything's at your fingertips as to what you need. And at the same time, for the property owners, they can always go on our website and look up their balances 24/7. So everyone has access to information, both the public and the city, as to what's being done. But again, we're going to try to be as creative as possible to get you your money and move forward with things in a timely manner. And if there's some accounts that are holding up the process, like, we're not going to let that hold up 100% of the accounts. We'll put those in a pile and deal with those as we're at the same time moving forward on the ones that there's no problems on. So
How often would you provide that reporting to council?
Well, when there's a weekly remittance when we turn over our money. As I mentioned before, we turn over the money weekly. So we collect the money. The next week, you're going to get an ACH transfer with that in there. That also comes with a remittance statement that basically gives a very detailed breakdown of everything that's being collected in that remittance and what that is. And then we can do other statements too, depending upon what we want. I mean, we can work with Mary Jo and you guys as to how we do that. So what's going to happen going forward is, if you guys, when you guys sign the contract and enter the ordinance, then we're going to meet with you and sort of go over a lot of the little details in the contract, as I mentioned before, payment plan parameters, hardship programs, things like that, to cover all that stuff. And we can discuss how, you already, I think, have a copy of what our typical remittance statement looks like, but, we'll make sure that it works for you guys, and, we'll get it to you when you need it. So, yeah, there shouldn't be an issue with regard to you guys not having information you need.
Councilman
Kevin,
Gaughan,
yeah.
I just had a follow-up question to a question that was raised by Councilman McAndrew during the caucus. And because I'm reviewing your contract, it's with regard to the initial notice of the delinquent claim and the $40 or the $47 fee. That section, as I read it, indicates that and I believe you stated that the city wouldn't have to put that money up out front. That would only be, we would never have to put that up front, that money, right?
So say the initial.
Let me just finish my point, if I could. And but the way I read this is it says the city shall pay Portnoff the one-time fee of whatever it is, it says $40 plus postage, and then later on it says city will adopt an ordinance that authorizes the charging of that amount, and then upon collection, the city will be reimbursed. So in other words, we won't get reimbursed until you collect against that property owner, correct?
There's two components to that, right? So in any individual account, you won't be reimbursed until we've collected. But
let me just follow up on that. So at that point, when Councilman McAndrew was asking is that we would have to upfront $47 times however many accounts you determine we have, and we wouldn't be reimbursed on that until you collect it on that property. Correct? Is that right?
Well, so let me just clarify. So individually, right, on any individual property, you don't get your $40 plus the $5.75 postage back until we've collected. But for that initial invoice, when we send that to you to pay the cost of sending out that first letter, we won't invoice you for that cost until cumulatively we've collected at least that much. So, right, on any individual account, you might not be reimbursed. But say that initial invoice cost the city $250,000, we would collect $250,000 before we send you that invoice. So there's no.
Where does it say that in the contract? Because I think
it doesn't say that, and we can put that, if you want to put that in there, we can put that in there.
It's kind of important. It's kind of important for
I'm just telling you that's what we do, though. I mean, we always do that. But but I'm happy to put that in there if that's an issue. But that's our practice. That's what we do.
Okay. Well, so I think certainly we need to get that clarified for this.
Put it in
time.
there.
That's fine.
And then the question I think someone raised about the percentage of your percentage of collection. And I know it's difficult for you to determine because you just got the data today, but in the information that was provided to council, Mary Jo, there was an indication that they collected 20 to 25% on year one and then greater than 50%. Where did you get that information, Mary Jo? You know, the information was provided to council. There was a spreadsheet that did a comparison of the 7 vendors, and there was a recovery of accounts.
Okay, hold on. I was not, I don't know what was sent to, oh, wait.
So
I don't know what was sent to council.
there was a comparison between the 5 5 bidders, and the indication was, and I guess I presume that this was used in determining who was the most responsive bidder. There was an indication of 20 to 25% in year one, and then greater than 50% in total recovery.
I'm looking at, oh, are you talking about row 12, recovery of accounts?
Yeah.
But it's attached to the proposed ordinance that's been submitted to council.
Yeah, you're correct. It's column number, row number 12 there that you're looking at.
Oh, that information was provided by the proposers, by each of the proposers.
So is that the estimate of what they believe they would recover in year one, or?
Well, no, you know, that was, in some cases, the proposer provided what they anticipated they would recover in year one, but other proposers, one other proposer, their percentage that they provided was a cumulative percentage on a number of accounts. So it was over a period of time. So it was almost like not being able to compare apples to apples in some cases with regard to what they provided us.
And then greater than 50% total recovery was also considered. I'm looking on the attachment that what was submitted to council as Exhibit A to the resolution.
Okay. I'm sorry, I should have that.
Well, let me ask you that. Was that considered in determining who was the most responsive bidder or responsible bidder?
We considered an array of, I mean, we used a rubric with various factors to consider.
Was this like did you have a committee like they had for the health care broker in identifying in reviewing the bidders?
No, we didn't have a committee.
All right, well, I'm just wondering where the numbers came from, the percentages.
Okay. The percentages were provided by the bidders, and they provided different metrics that weren't exactly identical. But those of us who evaluated it was the business administrator, Carl, myself, the mayor, the city, I think, and I think we conferred eventually with the city solicitor too.
Okay. And then I just have one more question. Your firm is based in King of Prussia, right? Montgomery County?
Well, yeah, our main office is in King of Prussia. We also have an Allentown office, which actually Bob and Dave are on the call. That's where they actually work out of.
And would you be charging for any travel costs that you would incur in coming here presenting different petitions and filing petitions?
No.
I can comment on it. We're up in Lackawanna County Courthouse probably between Dave and I probably at least twice a month. But we don't charge any additional fees or tolls for that matter.
That's great. Thank you. That's all I had, President Gaughan.
Thank you. I have a few more additional questions. In section 2 here, it says cost to be added to the unpaid claims. In addition to the fees set forth in section 1, the reasonable and necessary out-of-pocket charges, costs, expenses, commissions, and fees incurred in the collection of the unpaid claims, including, and then it lists, including but not limited to things like postage, title searches, VIN searches. Can you just talk about that, what that amount comes out to, and if there's any, commission fees or anything like that?
Yeah, no, there's no. So you're talking about section 2 of the ordinance.
The
So
ordinance.
right. So basically, these are hard costs that are added to the file. As I mentioned before, court cost, sheriff's fees. We don't charge any commission. So we don't charge any commission at all. Again, and I think that was what distinguished my firm from the other firms that were all submitting to the RFP. I think all of them were going to charge a commission. And with regard to a commission, as I mentioned way earlier, I guess, there's just no incentive to do anything. Once that commission's added, it's there. So there's no incentive for someone who now owes money to do anything as a result of that commission. Again, we create the incentive by charging things incrementally, small steps, and giving them time to pay in between those steps with the options for payment plans and hardship programs. But that's what distinguishes us. So no, there's no commission. The fees are all right there in the ordinance, and people will see that from day one in the first letter that we send to them. So again, they know what's potentially going to be charged to them ahead of time. And by having a flat fee structure, it's predictable for the property owner. So, but no commissions. It's just the commission that might, I don't think there's, let me pull up the ordinance just to make sure. I don't think there's language of commission in that section, is there?
It just says under part 2 of the ordinance, it says, in addition to the fees set forth in section 1 above, which is the legal fees and collection fees that you've identified in your proposal, it says, in addition to these, there may be costs added to the unpaid claims. In the language, one of the words that's used is costs, expenses, commissions, and fees incurred in the collection of the unpaid claims.
Yeah, that would be like a hard cost. So again, like for example, like for taxes, like a tax claim bureau could take a commission as a result of the collection. It wouldn't be our commission. I guess it'd have to be like a legal commission that's charged to the account from the outside that we would have to pay for the collection purposes, but it's not our commission though. So no, these are just, these
I
are
don't
hard.
think there is a commission for collection of municipal claims. I'm not aware of it.
No.
So.
Okay. Section 4, and you talked about the hardship exemption policy. That would be created, correct me if I'm wrong, by the city. And you're saying in your proposal that you'll assist the city upon request in the establishment and administration of this policy without additional charge. Now, would that be something that you administer or the city administers?
So most of our clients give us 100% authority to deal with the hardship program because they don't want to be a part of it. They don't want to know who's even applying necessarily. They don't want to know. They want us to treat everyone the same. So it's, again, we're working for the city. So the discretion is up to you. But most of our clients basically let us do the hardship program as we always do. We have a formal application. It's available on our website. We can send it to people if they call for it. It's a formal process where they submit an application. They put their expenses, they put their income, they put special circumstances. We ask them to actually say what they can pay a month. And then we take that all into account. And if they meet the criteria for that program, it's really their ability to pay that dictates what that monthly amount is. Again,
what would the criteria be on that? Like, what criteria do you use when you're looking at an application?
Again, we'll look at their income and then we'll look at their expenses. And right, if there's expenses that are on there that aren't typical expenses that the average person needs to live by, and there's a Mercedes payment every month and they owe a lot of money to the city, we might not deem that a hardship because that expense is, the amount they're paying towards a car expense is way beyond what a normal person is paying for a car expense who has a hardship program. So we sort of look through the stuff that they put on there. But again, we find that most people that submit a hardship application are a true hardship, and we're going to let their finances dictate what they can pay. And we would recommend that the city allow us to give them more extended payment terms. At the end of the day, again, the discretion is up to you. If you wanted to review every hardship application as a city, you could. Again, most of our clients, when they use us, they like the fact that we're taking over all the administrative headaches and work and expense of doing the collection side, and we would do it all. But again, at the end of the day, you can have as much involvement in that process as you want to have, or as little as you want to have. We're happy with either, but most of our clients, they prefer to have us sort of run the hardship program. Same thing, the payment plans, like we would work with you in the very beginning to set what the criteria is and the timeframes for payment plans. And then at that point in time, it's a hard line in the sand, and that's what we do. And if they can't do that time frame, then the hardship program would potentially give them more extended payment terms if they meet the criteria for that. I mean, the key with the payment plans, for example, is that we typically recommend that payment plans be capped at 6 months, because if you go too far on payment plan, then they basically makes it very difficult for them to ever pay current on a bill. But again, some of these are older situations, and we might decide for some of the older claims that we'll make a different time frame. But again, that's something we would work out with you guys after we're hired, and sort of look for a sweet spot that makes the most sense for the city and your property owners. Again, because the goal is to get paid. And we've had clients before that decided. We had one client, for example, that after we were representing them for a while, they're like, we want to get tough on payment plans. We don't want to do payment plans anymore. And we told them we don't recommend you doing that because they've been successful, and they just felt like we're going to take a harder approach. Within 6 months, they were back on payment plans again, because it's just, sometimes for some people, if you say all or none, it's just going to be none. And that's not going to benefit them, and it's not going to benefit the city. Because again, our goal is not to move forward just to sell property. We want to get you guys your money. So we think that payment plans and hardship programs are a big part of what we do and a big part of our success.
Do you have a percentage of, out of all of your clients, the amount of hardship applications that you get, or percentage of those that you approve and those that you deny, and what that looks like?
No, I don't. That's a good question. I don't know that answer offhand. It's something we can probably do a little bit of digging around for. But again,
Okay.
most people who submit hardship applications, I feel like we tend to accept them because they're realistic with with what they're asking for and what they can pay. There have to be some type of red flag on there that would just indicate that there's something strange about that application. But again, the goal is to get the city paid, and the goal is not to sell property. And the hardships is a good point to that.
I also just wanted to jump in. If there's an offer that they make and we don't think it's sufficient, we can make a counter offer and try and work out a resolution. So, usually we're able to, by going back and forth, we can settle on a plan that's beneficial for both of us. So there is some flexibility there. It's not either, it doesn't have to be that we either accept it or reject it. Sometimes we'll send a letter and say, if they offer $100 a month, we'll say, no, we want 200, and, they accept that. So.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, let me just add to that too. That's a good point that David made, and that's the thing too. There's typically almost like two types of hardships. There's one hardship who, no matter what's going to happen, that person's always going to be a hardship situation for whatever reason. Their situation's never changing. Sometimes it's a temporary hardship, though, a job loss, an illness, where in 6 to 8 months they're going to be in a different situation. So sometimes we'll have a more temporary type hardship. We're going to put them on a hardship plan for a certain time period, and then we'll reassess with them after that period is over and see where they are. And maybe they're no longer a hardship at that point in time, or maybe they just go back to a payment plan. Again, this sort of indicates that we look at every file. Like what we do isn't just pushing buttons. Like we look at every file, and if someone calls in and wants to work with us, we're going to find a way to work with them to get the city their money and give them the ability to pay. But there's not, the hardship is not always cut and dry. We're going to look at each one depending upon what the situation is and figure out how to best deal with it.
Okay, thank you. Section 8, it talks about outside attorneys, that your Portnoff will be permitted at your discretion to hire outside attorneys to assist you in the collection of the accounts under this agreement. Can you explain Section 8 a little bit in more detail, and what outside attorneys you usually work with, how they're selected? Do you work with law firms or attorneys, and will you work with attorneys in Scranton because this is a Scranton account, or how does that process work?
We typically, we go up there. Dave and I typically represent the city. We've been up there so much over the last few years, we're practically local. And if we do have to bring somebody in, we typically would bring somebody from Lackawanna County to help us out. But we haven't done that in a number of years.
Okay. Do you currently work with any firms in Lackawanna County on any different accounts that you have?
In terms of, do we work? I deal with a lot of the attorneys up there. I deal with Dan Penatar. He represents a lot of the Tax Claim Bureau. Rick Finucci, we deal with him a lot. We deal with Joe a lot. So yeah, I know a lot of the folks that are up there because we're up there so often.
Okay.
This is typically something where there's going to be say there's like a conflict, or maybe we have a client in Western Pennsylvania where there's a quick motion that needs to just be handed to the judge. We might pay local counsel out there to just hand something over. But again, Lackawanna County, again, Bob and David are there often, so I don't anticipate this being used in this contract. But it's it's an option that we typically want to have just in case there's something that's not I guess it's not legally sophisticated, and it might be a hand up or something like that. But I don't anticipate it being used for you guys.
Okay. This question will probably be for Attorney O'Brien or Mrs. Sheridan. Do we know the amount that the city had to pay, or any amount that the city had to pay NRS as we part ways with whatever money that was outstanding?
Joe, do you want to take that?
Oh, Joe, you're muted. I'm sorry.
That's under discussion now. We've had 3 meetings with NRS. We have another one coming up. And we are discussing with them what may be owed to them or what they may owe us.
Okay. So
I can tell you this, it will not be a big amount of money without your permission. We're certainly going to come back to you. The unraveling of the NRS agreement has been a little complicated, and we're working on it now. And that'll be something that'll be submitted to council.
And was it the city's position? I believed it was the city's position, maybe a few months ago when we had last kind of talked about the delinquent refuse fees, that the administration or the mayor was looking to hire a firm to collect the delinquent refuse fees from 2002 to present. But moving forward, once we were able to get the refuse bill placed on the real estate tax bill, that we were in conversations with, or the city was in conversations with the county to collect the delinquent refuse bill. So is that still on the table, and is that still an option that you're considering? Yes. Okay, so this agreement then would just be for...
This is for 1 year, and then depending on what happens.
Is it 1 year, or I thought it was 2 years? Yeah, I think the agreement says 2 years, correct?
2 years, yeah, 2 years.
Okay.
I misspoke.
But that's just for, I mean, Portnoff would just be from 2002 to 2020, but then moving forward with any sort of delinquents, we're looking at some sort of agreement with the county, correct?
We are looking at an agreement with the county, yes.
For those that are on the tax bill, moving forward.
When 2021, those 2021s that become delinquent, that's when we might be in with the county. Tax Claim Bureau.
Yes.
I've mentioned this before, and I'd like to know if the administration is considering or would consider a grace period or amnesty type period for those people who owe significant amount of garbage fees, and to have them come forward during a certain period of time to waive the fees and the interest and penalties and whatever else, and to have them just pay the face. We talked about this last week. It's been an idea that I've had, which I think could bring in a significant amount of money into the city coffers for next year. But instead of trying to get blood from a stone before we hire a delinquent collector, to give people the opportunity, instead of, if they owe $1,000 and you're going to tack on additional fees, like I've been saying, what makes anyone think that somehow magically people are going to come up with more money? And, so is there any discussion that's currently ongoing in the
I think
administration?
Portnoff addressed that earlier, that that is, there are arguments being made both ways for these amnesty programs. It's something they've worked with, something they've instituted, and that is not something that's inconsistent with their contract. It's not something that's set forth in their contract, but it's not something that's inconsistent with. I mean, there could be an amnesty period. They could hold off for a couple of months, give people a chance to come forward before they start moving forward on the delinquent 2020 fees. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to do it. There could be a partial amnesty for older ones. The answer is yeah. Hasn't been decided on, but certainly is something that can be under consideration. I believe has been discussed. I don't think any decision's been made on it. There are people who think it's a mistake because then, people don't want to pay because they think they'll get amnesty. And also people who have paid, somebody who stepped forward in 2020 and made a big past payment or a big present payment, says, "Why, jeepers, I should have waited and got a deal." So,
well, we would bill this as a one-time, and we could, work it into an agreement or in the legislation that this would be a one-time thing. We would never do it again. I just think it makes sense.
Yeah, it's certainly something that should be discussed. And there's also in these cases that there's kind of a de facto amnesty on a case-by-case basis. People come forward, they have an excuse, there's an explanation for their default, things like that, and we enter into settlements. We do that all the time. Nothing big ones, but we do that all the time, and that's a form of amnesty.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it is a one-year contract. I misspoke earlier. Kevin, did you have anything to say on the amnesty?
I guess I have another suggestion, because our firm has done amnesty programs before, and we don't typically recommend them for things that are actually really collectible. And I mean, I don't mean illegally, not legally or legally collectible, ones that you can actually get the money on, because otherwise you're basically, to me, it sort of sends the wrong message potentially to those, again, as Joe mentioned, those people that have paid on time. You're basically putting up the potential that, I made a mistake of paying, and then in the future, if I wait, potentially, then I could maybe open myself up to an amnesty program in the future. I mean,
yeah, we would put in there that this would be literally a one-time thing. And I understand there's another way to look at it, but as you said before, we have $16.7 million in delinquencies. So, we've had collectors in the past. This is, to me, it's like trying to get blood from a stone. I think you need to give, and the only way that I would be in favor of this, or in favor of, entering into any sort of agreement, is if it was contingent upon a period of a grace period for people, especially in the midst of, the pandemic and the hardships that people are facing. Those people who paid on time, I pay on time, and I understand that argument. But we're not looking for people to pay nothing. We're looking for people to pay what's owed to the city, not the fees, not the interest, not the penalties. We're going to give. I would want to give a one-time grace period for people to come forward, get right with the city, get on a payment plan or whatever else, before you have someone come in and send letters and get aggressive and try to collect it.
I mean, one thing that we've seen that's worked is that we've had clients before we've been hired, they've issued a press release, and they tell the public basically that if there's people that have their delinquencies, we're planning to turn over our accounts to a private collector. We're going to give you X amount of time to make payment on these accounts. And if you do that, you'll obviously avoid having to pay extra fees and costs that will be added. We've had clients that have done very well with that type of press release, whereby people will come to the table, and again, they'll start paying before the accounts even come to us, just knowing that the accounts are going to be coming to a private collector. That's something that's worked well for some of our clients. I know that as a fact. So that's another option without.
What about waiving the fees and the?
Yeah, they don't typically waive them. Again, the clients that we've worked with amnesty programs are ones where there's just been, there's been no success basically as a result of the fact that property values aren't high enough to sell to get the money that's owed. It's really, these accounts are very, I mean, that's our process. The only way our process really doesn't work is at the end of the day, the property that we're collecting upon is not sellable, or the amounts that are owed exceed the amount of property, and thus everyone's not going to get paid. Other than that, our process works well. So, basically the ones that we've done the amnesty for, some of them have been in Western Pennsylvania in areas that are depressed, properties aren't selling. There's amounts that have been owed for a long point in time, and the client's willing to just do anything to try to get something because they really don't have a lot of likelihood to collect on those accounts. So we've worked with those types of people to try to do an amnesty program. But for clients where it's collectible at the end of the day, we just don't recommend it because, again, there's sort of mixed signals being sent. And at the end of the day, the city is actually losing money that it doesn't necessarily have to lose. Because again, for you guys, again, you have delinquencies back from 2002 to 2019. If you do an amnesty program, there's people that owe 1 year, 2 years of collections that are now going to benefit. And you're probably going to get 100% of your money anyway. So potentially the city is now losing money that there's a very good likelihood that you're going to get. So to me, you do a press release, you give them a warning, you give them some time. If you want to give them some time, you give them some time and say, this is your period of this is your amnesty period, in a sense, where we're not going to do anything and we're going to give you the chance to pay. And if you don't pay at the end of this period, we're going to turn over the accounts. And you're giving them a month or two, whatever you want to give them to pay without any extra penalty. You can stop, to the extent there's interest, you can stop interest, I guess, if you wanted to, and say we're not going to accrue any more interest, things like that, and give them the chance to pay. I feel like if you're waiving something that's due to the city and that's collectible, to me, that's a loss at the end of the day that's unnecessary.
Yeah, I disagree. I think, I think there's two schools of thought on this. I just think that the newspaper did an analysis a few years ago when the city raised the fee from 175 to 300. That's when you really saw delinquencies go through the roof. I mean, we live in an area where the median income is like $25,000, $26,000 a year. It's hard for people to pay the fee that's in place. And we're in a position now where it's hard to lower it because it's been that way now for a number of years. So again, to me, when you have somebody who really can't pay $300, and when it went up to 300 from 175, and then you add on interest and fees and penalties, what makes anybody think they're going to be able to come forward with money from like the sky when we're in the middle of a pandemic and people are hurting or out of work? I think, the only way I'd be in favor of moving forward with this company or any company for that matter would be if there was an amnesty, waive the fees, waive the penalties, and give people a chance to pay pay what's owed to the city originally, not all the extras that come along and where you crush people with it. I just don't agree with that.
Bill, let me say something. NRS is out the door on December 31st. We don't have a tax collector on January 1st. Delinquent tax collector. There's not any money going to be coming. So we have to. I would just ask you to reconsider saying you won't support it unless that's a contingency. Maybe let's say we support it and then we can discuss it. Because if it's not adopted, who's going to collect the delinquent tax? Who's going to get all those 2020 delinquent taxes? We don't have.
Well, I think that gives the incentive to the mayor and to the mayor's cabinet to get a proposal together quickly, and then I can't speak for the rest of council, but I can't consider this unless there is a grace period or an amnesty. I can't in good conscience hire a company that is going to go after people, and if you owe, I get that. But I can't in good conscience agree to that during a pandemic where there's people that have lost their jobs and are in severe economic hardship. I think you give people the opportunity to come forward and, as much as we can, erase or eliminate the fees and the interest and everything else. And we're looking at a $4 million revenue shortfall next year. I think this is a way in the first or second quarter of next year to get a significant amount of money in the city's coffers. So this is me speaking just for myself. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think if everyone else is on the same page as I am, then it would be incumbent upon the administration, if they want to hire or us to approve the agreement, to move forward in coming up with a proposal or a plan, because I think it's very, very important. So that's my spiel on it.
Well, how long a grace period would you want?
Well, I don't know. I think in cities, it really ranges from, 60 days to 90 days. It really would depend on a number of different factors, but I would be open to any suggestions from the administration. Again, I just think it's important before we hire a collector to send people letters and take people to court. I think we have to give people a chance to, and I'm not talking about amnesty in terms of just letting people off free. Just pay what you originally owed. And again, there was an analysis done a few years ago when it went from 175 to 300. That's when the delinquencies went up. And the people I talk to in my neighborhood, I have trouble paying it. So, I mean, if I missed it, all of a sudden now I go from owing 300 to like 600. Well, if I can't pay 300, where am I coming up with $600 from? I don't disagree with hiring a company maybe to go after the people who just are constant scofflaws with this stuff, because it's not fair to the people who pay consistently, like myself. But on the other hand, I think you have to give people a chance to pay what's owed to the city, especially in light of the economic difficulties everyone, including myself and people in Scranton and around the world, are facing.
I think everybody hears you, and I think that we can probably work out something with the Portnoff. But the alternative you give us is to not hire a delinquent tax collector. The city, that's more than an amnesty. That means don't anybody pay because you're not going to get a collection efforts. I mean, we have to have a delinquent tax collector because the NRS is gone. They're going to be picked up and they're gone. There's going to be nobody collecting. Why would anybody want to pay now if there wasn't going to be a collector? If it was just going to sit there. So that's why if you could approve this, and then we hear you, hear the sense of council that there should be a grace period and amnesty period, and we can work that into the agreement. But just not hiring somebody, it makes it that really is going to increase the city's deficit if we don't have any way to collect delinquent taxes.
Well, I think that, I talked to the mayor about this, and she was kind of back and forth on it, didn't really have an opinion on it yet. She, was looking at both sides of it. I think I don't want to not hire someone, but I think before I would personally consider it, we would have to have something in the agreement or some kind of plan from the administration to have an amnesty or a grace period for people. So.
I hear you.
Okay. Chairman Gaughan,
Speak to this a little bit. So I kind of agree with everybody, but in different pieces. So I don't like the word amnesty because that to me sounds you get off free. So we don't want that. I know that Kevin, you said you're going to hit the ground running, and when you do, you go after the out of town guys that owe tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, so they're the first ones you go after. When you said you're going to from day one, that's fine. I agree with maybe giving a break. So, and making the people aware at a press conference, that's fine. Come to some type of agreement where, okay, it's 30, 60 days. I'm fine. I'm open to any of that. But to give the people some time to say, hey, you know what, maybe this is the time I can pull it all together and pay something or get on the right track. And then, of course we have to collect the delinquents moving forward but I see a combination of all three that works for me.
And
just to clarify a second, we don't go after individuals. We pursue the collection across the board. So I just wanted to make sure that that's absolutely clear. So even if
okay, maybe I meant put a little more effort than the person that owes $310. Put a little more effort in the person that owes 20, 30,000.
Sure.
I'm not saying going after, but find them.
Right.
And
I just want to be clear about
work a little harder. That's fine. I get what you're saying, but I think we focus on them first.
Carl, did you have something you wanted? I saw you wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Gaughan. So I think your first point, you're right. The administration, I think we're aware. I think of I think your your willingness, right, I think to do something for the community, and I think it's well founded. I think, as just going into next year, we're very sensitive to you know, the stress that people have been under this year, and it will continue through next year. So that, I think it's a point well made. I think in terms of the discussion and the analysis in terms of how we can put into effect something along those lines, we really have not had any meaningful, let's say, analysis on that, just so you're aware of that. So yeah, it's not really been brought into this dialogue around the arrangement with Portnoff, not at this point. Just so you're aware of that. Yeah, we have not, you know, considered anything, you know, structurally that would go into this contract. Not at this point.
Okay.
So yeah,
well,
yes. So we'd have to take that offline basically, and you know, we'd have to have that dialogue, I think, to your point, you know, for consideration.
Okay. Yeah, I would appreciate if that could occur, you know, as soon as possible, because, you know, again, that's the only way that I would consider what was in front of us that we tabled last week.
Yeah, point taken. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to add anything, or anyone have questions?
I'll say I'm in agreement with you, President Gaughan.
Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you so much. This was really a good discussion, and thank you for all of the information, Kevin and Bob and Solicitor O'Brien and David. So thank you very much, and we'll continue to consider the proposal and all of the things that were brought up tonight. Thank you very much. And Mary Jo, I know you're sticking around to continue our discussion on garbage tonight.
Thanks for having us. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
appreciate the time, and we're excited to work with you guys.
Okay.
Thank you for taking time.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, we're staying on the theme of garbage tonight. We have Mary Jo Sheridan, our city treasurer. And Mary Jo, thank you very much for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. So one of the things that we're bringing off of the table to vote on tonight is the city's plan to roll the refuse fee into the real estate tax bill. So Mary Jo, I'll turn it over to you. If you just want to explain the rationale behind that, the thought process, and what the plan is.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity, President Gaughan. So since September and through November, the city has been working toward moving the refuse fee onto the real estate bill in large part to ease the bill paying process for taxpayers, to provide a single point of payment. And just to make clear, I mean, we have had multiple work sessions and have had a very good rapport with the single tax office staff, and our departments, the DPW, the LIPS department, and Treasury have all worked together with our own IT department to establish the processes, to create better communications to ensure that the refuse fee database is as clean as possible. Now that process will be ongoing into next year. There are approximately 27,000 properties on the refuse fee billing file. About 10%, around 2,700 of those properties are properties that we still have to work on. LIPS might have to go out to verify that a property is a 1 unit, 2 unit, 5 unit, and to make sure that we're billing correctly for different properties. So we are working, all of us together with STO, to ensure that the database that we're using to bill is as clean as possible. That said, we know there are issues with that, and that's why we have in our 2021 budget, we have established this position of constituent services, and this is the person who would maintain the database and also deal with constituents to resolve discrepancies, not just discrepancies with the database, but also to address exonerations for vacancies. There are a lot of, there's a lot that happens throughout the year with regard to, the bills, adjusting them based on different circumstances for different properties. But the important point that I would hope that everyone would understand is that we have had, since I think 2011, NRS, our current delinquent refuse fee collector, has been collecting and has staffed 2 people in the treasurer's office since 2011. Since I believe the 2012 contract, that contract stipulated, there was a clause added in that contract that provided for NRS to collect not just the delinquent refuse fees and the delinquent taxes, but also to collect the current year refuse fees for free. But they did, part of the reason they did that was so that they could keep updating the database, the delinquent refuse fee database, as the years go by. And they, of course, their fee that they paid, that they collected from us, was the 15% off of the delinquency collections. But the important point is that December 31st is those 2 staff persons' last day. So the people who collect not just delinquent refuse fees, but also and delinquent taxes, but also the current year refuse fees, those people are gone. And this constituent services person stationed in the treasurer's office will perform one function that the city has to maintain control of, and the single tax office will become the collector of the refuse fee. And this simplifies the process for the tax and rate payer, for the fee payer and the taxpayer. They go to one place to pay their taxes, mail it to one place. The other thing that's nice about this new plan is that instead of a 2 installment payment plan, the installment plan for paying refuse fees will shift to 4 installment payments spread over a wider period of time, which is good timing in light of the difficult economy and the uncertainty because of the pandemic. Now, it also does shift somewhat the timeline, as we were talking, earlier today, or many of us have been talking over the last several weeks and months. Instead of the refuse fee bill going out the door in May and the discount period being June 30, the refuse fee bill will go out at the same time, because it will be on the real estate tax bill, and the discount period will match the discount period for the refuse fee, but the discount rate stays the same. So the 10% discount rate for the refuse fee will stay the same. But I think, let's see. Can I bring up one other point before taking any questions? You had mentioned to me earlier that a citizen had raised concerns about tax cheaters, and she was concerned that tax cheaters, about this refuse fee being rolled onto the real estate tax bill being, possibly better for tax cheaters. But really what happens is the opposite. By putting the refuse fee onto the tax bill, the fee and taxpayer doesn't have the discretion to pay one and not the other. They both get paid together, and they get drawn down. If someone does installment payments, they get drawn down together. So there's no, discretion, and it will help. We believe it will help significantly the collection rate on the delinquent, or on the refuse fees.
Mary Jo, can't a clerk do that? I mean, can't one of our union clerks provide that? Can't they do that job?
Which the the constituent services job.
No, the refuse fee. You said just actually collecting it, an extra body when the one from NRS leaves. Can't we utilize a clerk to do that function? A union clerk.
Well, part of the problem with, like, part of the impetus to move it onto the real estate tax bill was to simplify the process, so that, I mean, we have so many people who come to City Hall and then have to go down to the single tax office. So they're paying one, their tax bill in one location and their refuse fee in another location. So, one big reason why we want to do this is to simplify the process for the tax and ratepayers, for the citizens.
So in other words, so if I, I'm going to pay my taxes this year, I go down to the single tax office, I'm paying my real estate taxes, my county tax, and now my refuse fee at the single tax office, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And if I'm a citizen and I say, I got my real estate tax bill, there's a $300 garbage fee on there, but I don't, get rid of my garbage anymore. There's or it's on a vacant lot, or there's a half a double here, and there's no one in there for the last 6 months. You're saying that you go to City Hall, you go to the treasurer's office, and you're dealing with now that constituent services person, correct?
Yes. So that person would be referred to the constituent services person at the city, who is also going to be maintaining the database, which is huge for the city. I can't emphasize enough how important it is that we are taking charge and owning our own data. Really, for the first time, this will allow us to manage our collections better, and to, we can look at our collection rates and manage them so much better if we know what we're getting. So that constituent services person will deal directly with the constituents, but will also be the person who will update the database and maintain it. So if there is, for instance, an exoneration for a partial or full year vacancy, that person would maintain that database. And then also that person would adjust the database. If, say, DPW says, this looks like it's a, 7-unit property, not a 5-unit property, we can coordinate with LIPS and then coordinate with Treasury, stop pickup, update our database, or vice versa, add a property that we've been billing as a 1-unit and change it to the appropriate 2, 3, or 4-unit. So we're talking in a structured way with each other to modernize, update, and improve the accuracy of that database. And the important thing about that too is, next year, when we go to bill, when we go to give that database to the single tax office, we're giving them a better product, a more accurate bill to collect for us.
Okay, and you're confident that this constituent, because you're going from having 2 people through NRS who were in the treasurer's office, to now they're obviously leaving because the contract is ending, and you're replacing the 2 of them with one constituent services person. And I think in the budget there was one job was swapped out. There was an administrative, I think, assistant or cashier or something. Okay, so you're confident that this one person can handle, all of the activity that will most likely go on with this new change.
Yeah, it's 2021 will be an especially busy year. So because we are going to be working hard to correct a database that needs work. And we are going to be ready to be responsive to the public when the public is referred to us by single tax, or when they call us directly or visit us or email us. That person will be ready and designated, but that person will also have to be the person to, on an ongoing basis, maintain that database.
Right.
So we'll have collections at single tax, and we'll be.
Let me jump in. Just I think it was Councilman Schuster, maybe it was Councilman McAndrew. I don't see that well anymore. Raised the question, said that couldn't professional union clerks do the collection? I think the answer to that is yes. At the present time, the collection is being done by independent contractors employed by NRS, sitting in the treasurer's office. They're also doing whatever's done in constituent services. Now the collection efforts are going to be sent down to single tax office, and they're going to have their people doing it. So you're going to have the professional union trained employees doing it. And the constituent services will be done out as, and the reason for the split up, it was just explained by Mary Jo. I don't want to talk about that, but the answer to your question is yes, and that's going to be done that way.
And can I say one more thing, President Gaughan?
Yeah.
I think the important thing for us, for the city, is that we make every effort to maximize our collections, to improve our collection processes. If we're doing a better job collecting revenues, all of our revenues, if we're doing a better job, and that includes, if we're doing that, then we can, I don't want to say not raise taxes, but like that's what I have in my mind. If we collect better, then we don't have to increase taxes, or what, I shouldn't say that, but you know what I mean? I mean, we really should manage them the best that we can so that everybody out there who's paying their taxes isn't shouldering more of a burden because of those who are not. And as I say that, I fully appreciate what President Gaughan and other council members have said about people who are struggling and these very difficult, difficult times that we are in right now. But at the same time, if I do think it's important to collect better and in a more modern way, where we own our data, where we manage it, and we're not relying on vendors that we can't get enough information from. And I'm not saying that, I don't want to blame, because I don't know what was asked for in previous administrations by, of any vendor. I don't want to be judgmental that way, but I just do think we need to own our data, manage it, and collect as best we can.
Kevin?
Mary Jo, so it's my understanding that the contract with Portnoff, that is intended to be delinquent taxes from 2002 to 2020. I'm sorry, delinquent refuse fees, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so then prospectively, and I can understand why the county wouldn't want a piece of that hornet's nest, but prospectively, is it your intent to pursue an intergovernmental agreement with the county that they would collect the delinquent refuse fees going forward? Now that now that you have that this new organization in place, and it's going to be it's going to be on the tax, it's going to be on the property tax bill, it's going to be collected by the city tax collector, and prospectively we would enter an intergovernmental agreement with the county that they would be managing or collecting the delinquent refuse fees going forward.
I would say yes, that is the intent, but I would add the caveat that we also want to track the effectiveness of collections with anybody. I mean, I think we want to hold everyone we work with accountable as we should be held accountable. So, so that's the only caveat. But yes, that makes sense to me. So, and that's what we've thought.
So at the end of the calendar year 2021, we don't have fees collected, refuse fees. What's the thought as to who's going to be pursuing those delinquent fees, refuse fees?
In 2021?
Correct.
So
Well, the plan at this point would be with the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, Mary Jo, thank you for the comments that you made there. I think we all understand what you were saying, or at least I understand what you're saying. Right now, as I see it, we have 16.5 million in delinquents out there, and I think when we bring this company in, I think they're going to do their best to hurry up and get on the cases of all of those 16.5 million. So, I mean, from my perspective, it seems like we're turning over all of that money to them at that point. And if we ever decide to part ways with them, they'll be taking that with them unless we pay them off going out the door, correct?
Well, Councilperson Schuster, I do see your point, and I definitely appreciate your concern, especially given the situation with the outgoing vendor, and sorting that out. So I definitely appreciate your concern. But I think that Portnoff is going to have to evaluate the receivables that we have on the books first. So I'm not sure. I would assume they would take all of those accounts or deem all of those accounts collectible. I think that, we're still negotiating our separation from NRS. And, also, so I think it's not quite as black and white yet. I think that they would account to us as to what accounts they think are feasible for them to go after. We're still talking with the outgoing vendor. So I do appreciate your concern, but I mean, one thing that is important to realize is like the 2002 to the 2020 delinquencies can't be collected by the county. Like they can't take them. They can only collect delinquencies for those refuse fees that the county has billed for. So 2021's delinquencies are the first year of delinquencies that they would be able to collect for.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that.
22. Yeah.
And I understand it wouldn't be that whole 16.5. They're going to have to weed through that, see what is collectible, what isn't. I just hate to see us, when we look at this, it's a 1-year deal, but I feel like that 1-year deal opens them up to 1 year of choosing what's theirs, I guess. So I'd hate to see the city sell itself short by passing 18 years of collection over to them.
Well, I did, let me just clarify
Where
a little bit.
These are the old collections, a lot of those, most of those have been already leaned, and they're kind of just waiting for further action. I think when the new collector, be it Portnoff or anybody comes in on January of 2021, they're going to get a whole book of delinquent 2020 refuse fees, and they're going to proceed forward with the letters, the liens, and so forth. The ones before them have mostly all, if they're worthwhile, they've mostly all been lettered and liened. So it's not so much turning it over to them. They've already done all the things you can do under the Municipal Claims Act, and then they'll be collected. The way if the lettering and the liens don't work, then maybe they'll be collected if they're turned over for an upset sale, or maybe they'll be collected when the property's sold, or maybe they'll be collected when the property is refinanced, or maybe they'll be collected, through an inheritance situation. So it's not like they're going to get 20 years of claims, and they're going to have to. The big work is done on the new ones, because a lot of the work on all these 16.5, they haven't just been sitting there. Some of the old ones have, but in the last couple of years, we've had NRS in there. They've sent out the letters, they've liened them. The money just hasn't come in. So it's not. It's not like that we're just turning all these over to them, because a lot of those claims are sitting there, and all possible collection efforts have been done, and it's just a question of waiting. Can you get them through an upset sale? Can you get them through a refinancing? Can you get them through a sale? Can you get them through an inheritance? Or is somebody going to just come forward and pay them?
And can I make a correction too? I think it's a little bit, and this was my mistake. I think it's not so accurate to refer to this inventory of delinquent receivables as 16.7 million. And that's my bad, because I think I said it first. But that's the balance showing on the October 31st database from NRS, which is the most recent one that we got. But just to give you a little bit better picture of what it really is, it's the face value plus interest plus penalty, that 12% penalty. That's the face and penalty is 9.2 million. Okay. And then there's 2.8 million of additional interest. And then according to this, almost 4.7 million in costs, which we're trying to get an understanding of. Okay. So we're talking about a face value of, how do I do the inverse of 9.2 million divided by 1.12? It's about 8.2 million. The face value of this inventory is about 8.2 million. Okay. And then another million is the penalty, then interest and costs.
All right. Thank you, Mary Jo.
One more question about Mary Jo. Could I just go back to the constituent services person? Why can't that person? Why can't that person just work in the tax office, a single tax office? Instead, we're talking about making it easier and bouncing around and not bouncing around. Why can't that person just work out of there?
Oh, Councilperson McAndrew, that is a very, very good question. And here's the bottom line for me, why this person should be retained in the city. This person is going to maintain the database that we need to manage, okay? We need to manage. DPW, LIPS, and Treasury all need to stay. We all have impact. We all have input on this database, okay? That's number one. Number two, decisions about whether to exonerate fees for vacancies, reviewing whether someone's application for a vacancy is is meritorious and valid, and whether the exoneration should be granted. That decision, the decision about any like other adjustments that might need to be made for whatever reason, those decisions, that authority really should remain with the city. It should rest with the city with regard to that type of constituent services. Do you know? It is a good. It does. You know, I can see. You know that it could be appealing to have that person out at single tax. But I really think that it should rest with the treasurer. I mean, the treasurer is supposed to be that office is supposed to be the office to research and review exonerations and applications, you know, vacancy applications, things like that. So I would just, I would.
I think that's Mary Jo gave the perfect answer there. That constituent service person is not just a collector. That person has to make discretionary decisions, which have to be, are going to be things that are going to be, that person's going to refer to the treasurer. The treasurer is probably going to come to me, and some of them,
Yep.
They're going to go to the mayor. Some of them are going to go to you if it's a big enough exoneration or a big enough change. So it's something that there's a whole level of responsibility that all rests with the city, not with the single tax office, who are not, they're not city employees. They are contract with the city. So yeah, it has to have someone with the authority to make that decision. Whereas the collectors at the single tax office, they can collect the taxes. They're not exercising governmental discretion.
And Councilperson McAndrew, I really do communicate with the law department pretty frequently, especially since we are trying to address some issues that have lingered out there for certain property owners for too long. We are in communication a lot to resolve issues.
I'm not saying for you to lose an employee. The employee would be yours, but just working down there and compiling the data there. Do you know where I'm coming from or not?
Mm.
And populating that database that you're looking for.
Mm. I don't know. But I never considered logistically having a treasury employee at single tax. I don't know. Would that be possible?
Well, you had 2 NRS employees.
In City Hall, right?
Yeah,
Right.
so, I mean,
That's a good point. Good point. That's a great point. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns?
This may be. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tom.
This might be a little off task, but you talked about single units, multiple unit homes, things like that. Do you know how many we have in the city that aren't properly identified? Is that a large number, or is it just a handful?
Yeah, we did and this is the result of work sessions with multiple city departments and single tax. Single tax staff have been incredibly helpful and knowledgeable in helping us to identify properties that need to be reviewed. And we did an analysis of the data and identified of the approximate 27,000 properties that are on the refuse fee bill, that are on the refuse fee database. There are approximately 2,700 that we need to address. Like we need to DPW and or or Treasury or a combination of both. We have to do some work to, clean up those, either the database or change the bill, to be more accurate. Some of them are easy to resolve. There's some that I would consider low-hanging fruit, like things that we can easily clear up and do so right away. But some of them are going to need some more, a little bit more work. We're going to have to go out and maybe inspect or do.
Okay. If someone has an issue with that, would they be to contact you about it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Contact me or my office. That constituent services person will be the person for that. Plus, that's kind of an ongoing issue, just because there are always things happening, whether it's property getting demolished or built, or changing status somehow. I talked to somebody recently whose property, the mother-in-law house in the back, was demolished a number of years ago, and she's trying to get her bill sorted out. So.
And for a review of that nature, there's a fee to the property owner to get that reviewed and changed?
That's when I wish I had Tom Oleski here. I'm not sure. That's a good question. And I'm not sure how to answer that. I think it depends. I think if we're trying to verify the accuracy of our database, some things we can do by just, going and looking at the premises and seeing whether there's more than one electric box. Some things are easy to identify, but we have plans in place and further plans developing to do this in a way that is targeted and efficient, by possibly targeting certain neighborhoods. One area that comes up are some of the homes up by the university, where it appears that there might be more than one unit based on the number of students gathering outside on the weekend. So there are different areas that we can look at over time.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Kyle, do you have a question?
I just have a quick comment, because I think we sort of mixed the two, Portnoff and then also moving the delinquent tax bill into the same discussion a little bit. But I think it's important that we keep them separate, because moving the refuse onto the tax bill is a way I believe to move forward into a more efficient collection system. That's not saying that I don't have reservations, but because I know there will be issues, because there's issues with the data. We all know there's been issues with the data going back years. But in my conversations, I was, pleased to hear, Mary Jo and Carl say, instead of, carrying those mistakes over from year to year, that someone will be there in that constituent service capacity to fix those mistakes, so that although they might be issues in year one, hopefully they're not issues in year two and year three moving forward. So, my reservations are a little, calmed down, just because the administration, to me at least, acknowledged that there are going to be issues and that they have a plan of addressing those issues then going into, next year and beyond. But then on the delinquent side, I think that's just, it's a tough situation, because we constantly try to go back and fix the mistakes of the past, where in reality, you want to just clear those books, so that once you move into a new collection system, that you don't repeat those mistakes of the past. So which is sort of why I agree with Councilman Gaughan's amnesty plan idea a little bit, just because it's just bad at this point. It's just bad debt on our books, and you're just trying to clear it off as fast as possible to move into a system that's more efficient. But I do understand the need for an aggressive debt collector once we get past that point. So I just wanted to make those comments quickly.
Okay. Thank you, Kyle. Anybody else?
And I would just add, Mary Jo, I appreciate you coming in as well as Carl to be able to answer our questions about this. Yeah, obviously before passing this legislation, we want to make sure this is the right choice for the city. And I understand how it will help in our collection rate. I was apprehensive too, wanting to ensure that, that we're being fair to those who might have multiple properties, or just making sure that we capture all those different properties. And I know the data, I'm sure there's plenty to go through and to really clean it up to get it to where it needs to be and where it should be, but hasn't, at no fault of yours or this administration's. I don't really have any questions at this time. I know that we've gone through a lot of this tonight, so thank you for sticking with us and responding to all of council's questions. We really appreciate it, and I think that this is going to be helpful in all of our next decisions.
Thank you.
So just to tie it up here, I guess kind of going with President Gaughan, what he had said, and then Mr. Donahue, as well as Mrs. Sheridan, and looking at an amnesty program does keep that in the city's hands. If we open that up for a short time period, maybe we get a nice influx of money. People have a warning that money comes in, and then we move into that agency or that firm to do that collection. But maybe the way I see that is, with that amnesty, we could keep that money in our hands with us dealing with it prior to turning it over.
Okay, thank you. The last thing I just want to say is we requested a copy of the other bids. I think there were 6 other bids. So if you can provide those to us, we would appreciate it. I think there was 5 or 6 other bids.
Yeah, absolutely. We will supply to council. No
Okay.
problem.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Does anybody have anything else? All right. Solicitor O'Brien, Mary Jo, Carl, thank you so much for coming.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
pleasure. It's good discussion as always.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, everyone,
Thank
have
you.
a good night.
Good night.
Okay. Let's see. So we're still in fourth order, getting off the garbage topic now. At this time, I'd like, if someone from council could please make a motion to accept public comment from the following individuals: Aaron McNaney and Marie Schumacher.
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. On the question? On the question, Mrs. Reed,
Wait.
can you please?
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry, Kyle. On the question?
No, I thought you were just going down the question and not asking Lori to read the comments. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Mrs. Reed, can you please read the comments into the record?
Thank you. The first comment is from Mr. Aaron McNaney. He identifies himself as a small business owner in the city of Scranton. As follows: regarding item 3C on council meetings December 1, 2020 agenda, I am concerned about the request for a $28,000 COVID Relief Act reimbursement claimed by the city of Scranton's OECD. The stated expense description is for Scranton City website updates to improve citizens' access to services and information to COVID pandemic. Will you please provide more information regarding what specifically cost $28,000? The city's website, scrantonpa.gov, is a very simple legacy website which should require minimal development costs. Based on my 8+ years of professional work in the web development industry, the requested reimbursement amount grossly exceeds what I would reasonably expect website edits of this magnitude to cost. I am especially mindful and concerned about these expenses as it is being claimed against CARES Act funding, which is being rapidly depleted and may have better uses, including additional small business support, which is desperately needed by our city's many restaurants and other herding industries. The second submission is from Marie Schumacher as follows. I would like to request the 2021 recycling schedule be changed by switching the frequency of corrugated cardboard with paper. A month's worth of paper can be very heavy for many. What steps are being taken to ensure the 2020 audit is received on time? What is the current date for receipt of the 2019 audit? Please ask the administration to include the Zoom information for all bid openings. What is the forecast for lost revenue due to the LERTA enactment? How much was lost in 2020? When will we see the master plan for the former Sorrente Center, including capital costs, operation costs, and expected revenue? Back in March, the city said they would bill Fox News for the town hall. What was the amount of the bill, date it was sent, and whether the bill has been paid? And that concludes the citizens' participation.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. With Mr. McNanny, and I hope I'm saying his name right, I think he makes a really good point. The item that he's referring to is actually on last week's agenda, and it was item 3C, and it was correspondence that council received from Eileen Cipriani, the executive director, and they were submitting an expense in the amount of $28,000 for a Scranton city website update to improve citizens' access to services and information due to the COVID-19 pandemic. I would like further information about this as well. So Mrs. Reed, if we can get in touch with the mayor and the IT department to find out exactly what costs $28,000. Off the top of my head, and Kevin, you may remember an email floating around, I think there was maybe an agreement that the city was going to enter into for a new website design or something like that. And wasn't it
CoStar.
A CoStar contract, right?
The reason this is able to go outside the normal bidding process is that it's a CoStar vendor and a proposal through CoStar through the Office of General Services in the state, and we participate in that program. That's why we were able to expedite it, I guess.
Okay. So I think, but I do think he makes a good point on, is this really something that the city would get reimbursed for the county? And it looks like, based on the other items that we've seen from the OECD director, there's quite a few things that we didn't get reimbursed for. One of them actually being of surprise, or at least they pulled it, the additions to the Serenity Center. So I would like additional information on that. And then Ms. Schumacher's questions, Mrs. Reed, if we could forward those to the administration and ask for an answer by next Tuesday, December 15th. The one question that she has about what steps are being taken to ensure the 2020 audits received on time. We've consistently asked for updates on this, and I think we've all stated that we were disappointed that the audit is again late this year. We did receive a draft of the 2019 audit, and I don't know what the date of receipt is for the completed audit. I think they were waiting on some things from OECD and another department. So the only thing council can do really is continue to ask for updates and hold the administration's feet to the fire in terms of making sure that this gets done. I thought it was going to get done on time this year because it wasn't last year, but we're not in that position. So
Councilman Gaughan, with regard to an outstanding request by Ms. Schumacher, she had previously requested for us to provide her with the number of outstanding or pending lawsuits that the city is a party to. And the law department has provided me with that information, which I circulated to you all earlier today. And the total number is there's 27 civil actions that the city is a party to. This number does not include any workers' compensation, heart and lung, or other claims. These would all be civil actions.
Okay, Kevin, I did see that you sent that out, and we'll get that out to Ms. Schumacher, and I appreciate that. Can you also check with the law department? I'd like to know if there's a policy of the cities, if anyone who represents the city would not be permitted to accept claims against the city. So I mean, I would assume that we have a policy like that, but I just want to double check and see if that's the case.
You mean as a plaintiff or
As
you
a
mean
as a plaintiff, correct?
a plaintiff lawyer? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do that.
Anyone else on the question?
I just want to talk about the audit again, just briefly. This is ridiculous. I mean, we talk about it almost weekly. And this happened last year and probably the year before. And you know, and it's a blame game. I just don't understand that we're not receiving the information in a timely fashion. Let me tell you something. When I first got married, I made wedding cakes on the side for extra money, right? It'd be like me, bride coming to me and say, you know what, I want a wedding cake on October 22nd. And then me say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can give it to you on January 5th, the wedding cake. So it's beyond, I can't understand this. And it's habitual from what I understand. So maybe the city should, you know, start looking at doing business with someone else.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. All those in favor of the motion to accept public comment signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. Mrs. Lee?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Councilman Schuster, any motions or comments?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councilman McAndrew, any motions or comments tonight?
Yeah, I usually get hacked by now. Yes, I would like to make, I just want to say, no, you know what? I just want to go over a couple of things. So usually I come and express or share the concerns and complaints of residents. And I don't mind doing it. It's part of my job, but I would like to provide updates. So I'm happy to report some things that have changed that, you know, we've been heard. So that illegal garage on 1149 on Salone Street has finally been shut down after months. So they're finally out of there. I'm sure the residents are very happy because it was a huge safety issue. And also to credit to Mr. Deeley, so I posed questions, 3 questions for the past 3 weeks. I finally got the answers. One about overtime, who's entitled to it, who's exempt, who's not exempt. The answer I got was only DPW supervisors. I'm saying in management capacity. Only DPW supervisor managers are eligible for overtime. 1 fleet coordinator, 1 recycling coordinator, 1 refuse foreman. These titles are obviously going to change in next year's budget, but to my understanding, they're the only 3 who can receive overtime, or they're not exempt from it. The second was, what's the total dollar going to be? What's the total dollar amount going to be for the 12 new proposed positions? And that's inclusive of insurance and benefit, the pension benefit. So them 12 new positions, proposed new positions, are going to cost the taxpayers $710,960. All right, that's not including the proposed increases for a select few. So, like I said, I'd like to get the information back. I'm not happy with this one, number 2. So, and then also my question posed was, why was the fleet manager? Why is not the fleet manager handling the fuel card reports? Because I thought they were. I thought that was part of his position or the reason for the hire. The fleet manager doesn't do that. He reports to DPW director, okay? And he's responsible for the management of city, rolling stock vehicle assets. This includes scheduled maintenance, working with department managers to plan replacement or additions, and the sales or disposal of the retired vehicles. The fuel card management now has been moved to the business administrator's office. This is to centralize controls for all the city departments, including managing the request of allocation of cards, billing, and payments. So thank you for answering my questions. And that is all I have.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Rothchild, any motions or comments?
Yes, I just have a couple of quick comments. First off, over the weekend, I had received some concerns and complaints over the new route to get to the Christmas lights that the Scranton Police Department announced last week. So, the proposed route, or the way that they were asking vehicles to travel, was through Vine Street up to Arthur Avenue, so that Mulberry Street did not get clogged up with vehicles, and that emergency vehicles could still get through to the hospital up there. And I know I passed by over the weekend and noticed there was still a very long line of vehicles down Mulberry Street. So I'd heard from a couple of local residents and neighbors that are having problems with it. And obviously the concerns for the hospital still stand. And so I reached out to a few of the people who are working on the light show to find out from them what other ways or what other things we can do to help resolve it or make it easier. And I think they are working with the administration, with the mayor's administration, and also with Geisinger to find a better way. So I just wanted to provide a brief update on that, hoping for a quick solution since we do still have a few more weeks that the light show will be held, and it's the weekends in particular that get pretty busy and lined up with cars. So there's probably a lot of people who just might not be aware that they're asking people to use Vine Street instead, but even Vine Street could get just as backed up. I mean, it was going down Harrison Avenue, and it was also going all the way down Mulberry to where Domino's and the gas station is. The other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I know Councilman Donahue and Solicitor Hayes may also want to speak to this. We didn't get a chance really to bring this up yet, but about our call that we had earlier with a representative from American Water to discuss the Birch Street issue. So we have a couple of updates there just so the residents are aware of the situation and where they're at with the repairs. Solicitor Hayes, I know you had specifically included some of the things in your email. I don't know if you wanted to summarize the call.
Sure. So yesterday, Councilman Donahue and Dr. Rothchild and I participated in a call with Maureen Coleman from Pennsylvania American Water. The purpose of the call was to obtain an update on this longstanding project in South Scranton. Specifically, the project is being performed by Pennsylvania American Water in reaction to, or as a result of a consent decree issued by the EPA for past violation by the sewer authority. They need to put in a holding tank to prevent situations where there's a storm and combined sewer or combined sanitary and stormwater sewer go into the Lackawanna River. Dr. Rothchild and Councilman Donahue had raised the issue that this project was supposed to be completed. Last we heard was September. Then we heard the end of this year. What Mrs. Coleman explained to us was that they had encountered delays due in part to supply issues from Canada during the pandemic. They had encountered subsurface conditions which were difficult considering it was in a landmine or a coal mine area. But the long short of it is the report the report we received is that the project should be completed by the end of April of 2021. At that time, the general contractor, Pioneer Construction, or its subcontractor will do a full restoration of the roadways that were impacted, those being Birch Street, Willow Street, and Bergen Court. In addition, the construction that is impacting most residents is the closure of Birch Street. That should be completed by, that aspect of the construction project should be completed by the end of February, and would be in the road would be open at that point in time. So she was very responsive to our questions. They provided us with a 1-800 number that residents can contact with any questions or complaints they have. And I guess that could be put in, maybe in in third order for next week's meeting, because I have that here. So residents have it. I don't know if Kyle, if you want to add anything.
No, I mean, I think it was a good explanation of what, you know, what the delays in the project were, but I think, you know, from our perspective moving forward, we have to figure out, you know, some sort of solution to where a project, you know, of this scope doesn't take, you know, 2 years and shut down a residential street for 2 years. I think that's something on our end that we have to try to figure out a way to avoid, you know, moving forward.
I agree. I don't think it should have gotten to this point, and I know they've provided a lot of information on how much work has gone into this and the scale of the project, which I can appreciate, but still, I don't feel like it should have taken this long and gotten to this point. And you know, I think we're going to continue to stay on top of them, but it keeps getting extended. And sounds like they'll be done with the Birch Street portion earlier than the Willow Street. And I believe there was another street involved too.
Yeah.
So at least Birch Street will be opened earlier. I think she was estimating end of February with that. Correct?
That's right.
But by April, May, that would be the full restoration with complete paving, and we'll want to make sure that that's all completed to standards. No one should be left with, you know, with a rocky road after this is completed.
Great.
Okay, anything else?
That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councilman Donahue, any motions or comments?
No, I was just going to mention a little of that. And also a couple weeks ago, I know I had brought up an issue regarding a storm drain on Emmett Street. We did get correspondence back this week that it's been put on the schedule for PA American Water to fix that storm drain. So hopefully in the next couple weeks that gets fixed. And that's all I have.
Thank you. I just have a couple of things. First, I just want to make clarify one point that I made during our caucus with Portnoff. So when I mentioned amnesty program or grace period, I just want to be very clear that I am not saying that people should be forgiven the entire amount or should get away with something and not pay anything. What I'm simply saying is, over the years, we do the same thing over and over and over and over again, to the point of what I think is diminishing returns. So we have not been able to collect a few $1 million in delinquencies from 2002 to 2020 to the present time. We are in need of revenue. I would rather come up with some sort of plan or program, and I've mentioned this in the past, a plan or program to have people come forward and to pay what they owe the city, if that's possible. Because if we don't do that, then we are going to look next year at a $4 million shortfall and potentially using that OPEB trust money, which I don't agree with, or refinancing. I think this gives the city an opportunity to collect as a potentially significant amount of money. To me, this is about revenue. As Councilman Donahue said, clearing the books. There are people who owe a significant amount of money, and I really don't think that tacking on more fees and liens and everything else is going to bring in, the type of revenue to our coffers right away that we will need next year. And again, as I said, we do the same thing over and over and over again. So are we going to maximize the collections for the city, or are we going to just increase the dollar amount of the liens that are obtained, which makes it more and more difficult to collect those past amounts? And again, this setup with Portnoff or any collector for that matter, in the beginning, it mostly benefits the law firm first and the city secondarily. So what I'm simply saying is, give people a chance to come forward who have not come forward in the past for whatever reason, and we can't get blood from a stone, and see if they will come forward if we give a grace period, a one-time grace period for a certain number of weeks or months or whatever that might look like. So that's what I was suggesting, not that we would forgive, all past amounts or anything to that effect. So again, if we're talking about revenue, here's an idea. Why not try it? I don't believe in the city's history we've done it in the past. So I don't think it would hurt at all. I only think that we would gain more revenue coming into the city's coffers. We did receive a response from the Scranton Sewer Authority, and I had asked for the balance of the two escrow accounts, and they are as follows. There's a class action easement escrow. Right now, there is $11,509,586.87 in that escrow account. There's a second escrow account in the amount of $4,833,210.58. We did ask for a timeline on when those funds may be released and what that process looks like, and they replied that the matter's still in ongoing litigation. So there is the bottom line is there's a significant amount of money still outstanding. What those amounts look like after the litigation is solved, I don't know, but there should be some money at least coming to the city. I think it goes 80-20, Scranton and Dunmore. Mrs. Reed, I requested, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, a copy of the Workers' Compensation Reserve Analysis and Loss Forecast. We usually receive a copy of this with the budget at the end of the year. We did not this year, so if we can request that before next week, if it's available, I would appreciate it. And that is all I have for this week. Thank you.
Thank you. 5B, for introduction, a resolution accepting a donation from Breyers Towing located at 1013 Ferdinand Street, Scranton, PA, for the use of a portable light stand used to illuminate the Kaiser Valley Community Center parking lot, which served as a polling location the night of November 3, 2020, Election Day.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction, a resolution accepting donations provided to the city to aid in the city's response to its efforts to combat the COVID-19 outbreak.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a master lease agreement between the city of Scranton, hereinafter designated lessor, and Celco Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless, with its principal offices at 1 Verizon Way, Mail Stop 4AW100, Basking Ridge, New Jersey 07920, lessee, to lease space to lessee with respect to particular sites at which lessee wishes to install, maintain, and operate small cell communications equipment, as well as any and all necessary lease supplements outlined herein.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Let's see here. Please. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, and unless I missed it in here, I would like to know if they have any idea how many poles these antennas are going to go on and where are they located in the city. So if we can get an idea before next week. And then when I was looking through it, I think the amount that the city is going to get per pole is $270, and there's a $100 one-time application fee. So those are two questions that I have. So Mrs. Reed, if you can follow up with the city administration just to find out again where these poles are going to be located and throughout the city. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5E for introduction of resolution ceremoniously dedicating Joe Biden Way at the intersection of North Washington Avenue and Fisk Street in honor of President-elect Joe Biden.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I just want to say I'm thrilled. First of all, I'm thrilled that we have, no matter what political party you belong to or what your political affiliation is, I think we should all be thrilled and excited that someone who was born and raised in Scranton for the first 10 years of his life is going to be president of the United States, and he lived right on North Washington Avenue. It's a great honor for the city. You know, I had the honor and pleasure of seeing Joe Biden on election day when he came to Scranton. And I think, you know, better days are ahead, definitely. And I think the city is going to play a major role now in the White House and throughout the country. So this is was a great day for the city of Scranton. Anyone else on the question? Okay, all those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5F for introduction, a resolution, appointment of John Judge, 915 Electric Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18509, to the position of Scranton Fire Chief, effective November 30, 2020.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5F be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? Yes, on the question. I have one concern about this, and it's not about John Judge personally, because I'm sure he'd be a good fire chief. But in looking at the resume that was submitted by Mr. Judge back when he was appointed as the acting fire chief, one of the things that stuck out to me was that he currently is a part-time police officer in South Abington Township. And it says, according to his resume, that he is currently a part-time police officer. So my concern is, you know, this obviously being the fire chief in the city of Scranton is a full-time position on top of eventually, you know, transitioning probably into a role of emergency management coordinator. So I would be concerned at how someone could be a full-time fire chief and also, you know, a police officer in South Abington Township. So Mrs. Reed, if you can reach out, send correspondence to the mayor and ask the mayor if she's aware of this, number one, and number two, if Mr. Judge is still a police officer in South Abington Township, and if someone could explain to me how he would be able to perform both positions. Anyone else on the question? Okay. All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5G for introduction of resolution, appointment of Alex Mulfadis, 119 Penn Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18503, as a member of the Scranton Parking Authority effective November 24, 2020. Alex Mulfadis will be replacing Thomas Tanzitz, whose term expired. Alex Mulfadis will be appointed to a 5-year term effective November 24, 2020, and will expire on June 1, 2025.
This time I'll entertain a motion that item 5G be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved.
5H for introduction of resolution authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to accept on behalf of the City of Scranton Police Department a grant from the PNC Foundation for Fair and Impartial Police Training Program in the amount of $7,500.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5H be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Right?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, file of the council number 38, 2020, an ordinance amending file of the council number 6, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended imposing a tax for general revenue purposes on the transfer of real property situate within the city of Scranton, prescribing and regulating the method of evidencing the payment of such tax, conferring powers and imposing duties upon certain persons, and providing penalties by imposing the rate of the realty transfer tax at 2 2/10% for calendar year 2021, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
You're muted, Bill.
Oh, sorry about that. You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
6B, reading by title, file of the council number 39, 2020, an ordinance amending file of the council number 148, 1986, entitled, an ordinance amending file of the council number 98, 1976, as amended, and imposing a mercantile license tax of 2 mils for the year 1987 and annually thereafter upon persons engaging in certain occupations and businesses therein, providing for its levy and collection, and for the issuance of mercantile licenses, conferring and imposing powers and duties upon the tax collector of the city of Scranton, and imposing penalties effective January 1, 1987, by imposing the mercantile license tax at 1 mil for calendar year 2021, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
You've heard reading by title of item 6B. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6B pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
6C, reading by title, file of the council number 40, 2020, an ordinance amending file of the council number 147, 1986, entitled, an ordinance providing for the general revenue by imposing a tax at the rate of 2 mils upon the privilege of operating or conducting business in the city of Scranton as measured by the gross receipts therefrom, requiring registration and payment of the tax as condition to the conducting of such business, providing for the levy and collection of such tax, prescribing such requirements for returns and records, conferring powers and duties upon the tax collector, and imposing penalties by imposing the business privilege tax at the rate of 1 mil for calendar year 2021, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
You've heard reading by title of item 6C. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6C pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
6D, reading by title, file of the council number 41, 2020, an ordinance amending file of the council number 11, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended, enacting, imposing a tax for general revenue purposes in the amount of 2% on earned income and net profits on persons, individuals, associations, and businesses who are residents of the city of Scranton or non-residents of the city of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the city of Scranton, requiring the filing of returns by taxpayers subject to the tax, requiring employers to collect the tax at source, providing for the administration, collection, and enforcement of the said tax, and imposing penalties for the violations by reenacting the imposition of the wage tax at 2 4/10% on earned income for residents and 1% on earned income for non-residents of the city of Scranton for work done, services performed, or business conducted within the city of Scranton for the year 2021, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
You've heard reading by title of item 6D. What is your pleasure?
I move that item 6D pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
6E, reading by title, file of the council number 42, 2020. An ordinance amending file of the council number 100, 1976, entitled, an ordinance as amended, levying general and special taxes for the fiscal year 1977 by setting the millage for the year 2021, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter.
You've heard reading by title of item 6E. What is your pleasure?
Move that item 6E pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, resolution number 102, 2020, ratifying and approving of the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton on behalf of Scranton Cultural Center at the Masonic Temple to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, acting through the Commonwealth Financing Authority for a local share account grant pursuant to the PA Racehorse Development and Gaming Act in the amount of $95,928 for the project to be known as COVID-19 Public Health, Safety, and Security Upgrade, located at 420 North Washington Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, and authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials of the city of Scranton, Pennsylvania, to accept the grant if successful and execute and enter into a local share account grant contract and commitment letter with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to accept and utilize the grant in the amount of $95,928 awarded by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for such project.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chair for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of items.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, previously tabled, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for adoption, file of the council number 36, 2020, amending file of the council number 6, 2020, amending file of the council number 59, 2019, entitled, an ordinance amending file of the council number 17, 1994, entitled, an ordinance as amended authorizing the governing body of the city of Scranton to enact a waste disposal and collection fee for the purpose of raising revenue to cover the waste disposal and collection costs incurred by the city of Scranton for the disposal of refuse by imposing a waste disposal and collection fee of $300 for calendar year 2021, and the same shall remain in full force and effect annually thereafter, and to amend the timeline for payments, allowing change in the mechanism of billing, update the requirements for exonerations, and increase penalties for violations.
And what is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As the chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend passage of item 7B.
Is there a
Second.
Second.
On the question? On the question, I'm going to be in favor of this, putting the refuse bill on the real estate tax bill. I think it really boils down to common sense. And this will, number one, make it more efficient. Number two, it will streamline the process for taxpayers. So I think, when you boil everything down, it makes sense. And we were assured tonight by the city treasurer that there are pieces in place where this is going to be able to be managed. And that was one of my concerns. And again, they assured us that, that was going to be taken care of. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew,
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild,
Yes.
Mr. Donahue,
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan.
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted. If there is no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.